Meeting to order.
Right, but if something's not been approved,
This is the Hopkinton Conservation
Yeah,
Commission,
can't get in
March
before.
10th, 2020, at the Hopkinton Senior Center. And we have a document for review done.
Yeah, order of conditions, we're still waiting on revised plans, so we'll sign it, and then when the revised plan comes in, we'll issue.
All right. Okay, Clear Energy Group, 67 East Main Street. This is a request for a minor project exemption. If I saw this one.
Yeah, we continued it from
so that's the
last,
drainage issue.
from the last meeting. You guys had some questions.
Oh, okay.
Stand.
How you doing, gentlemen? Good, thanks.
Good.
This is over on,
Latest news.
Marathon Solar?
And that's
yeah,
it.
Marathon Solar.
Over at Weston Nurseries.
Yep. All right, so I think, the question was, you were concerned with the flow coming off the site, so you wanted to put the berm there?
Yes, so. sorry, go
Okay,
ahead.
yep, go ahead.
Well, in the process of trying to close it out, we were gonna submit a request for certificate of compliance. And, when that came up, there was some, information that came arise from the property owner that was concerned about drainage patterns, going over an existing, farm road or cart path.
Okay,
So in order to detain and infiltrate some stormwater on site, we're suggesting riprap berm in order to detain the water in that low area and infiltrate it down into the ground prior to leaving the site.
So what's the magnitude of the water issue out there? Is it,
Minimal, sir.
yeah,
Additionally, I'm not sure if anyone was here when this project was originally permitted, but
oh, yeah, we were over.
the project involved no site grading, no additional site work for tree clearing. In fact, actually, vegetation is improved in these conditions with the array built than what was previously out there, which was just a gravel or crushed stone,
Right,
in order for the nursery to actually be there for the stockyard. So this is just to help promote what's already going on out there from sheet flowing across.
okay. I guess the question that was raised by one of the commissioners, I think it was Mr. Cirillo, was the water is naturally heading down towards the wetland area there anyways, so, is the berm really necessary?
As far as stormwater is related, the answer to that is most likely no. This is just a simple thing to try to make an agreement with the landowner who has brought up their concerns. And
This
that
was
is
the
the goal.
Mez's property? Where the,
This is,
Mrs.
Correct.
Mezza, yeah. Do they use the road a lot?
I'm not super aware of how frequently they use the road, but since they brought up their concern, I'm assuming it's a decent amount. But yeah, once again, like you were saying, the natural drainage pattern is the same and will remain the same. This will just allow it to detain some of the stormwater before just leaving. However, stormwater will obviously pond up against the backside of that berm
Yeah.
and then
And
weave
infiltrate.
through the berm and then also potentially go around. So we're not choking off the wetland, which could be another concern. So all the stormwater will still be in the same general subcatchments and whatnot, which was previously proposed and approved.
Question, Jeff?
Sure, yep.
So, on the site plan, which is the cart path or the road that they're questioning?
a laser pointer if you need it.
That's being questioned as being impacted?
Between the berm and the
So
wetland
it's
there?
right here, it kind of goes up and it comes along.
The one that goes up to the top,
Yeah,
up
it
to the
comes
highlands
over
there?
here. It just kind of wraps around the edge of that existing pond that's out there.
So how is this going to protect that road or keep that road from washing out or whatever it is?
Actually, I'm sorry, can I borrow it?
You're just redirecting it with a berm?
So what's happening right now is, this is zoomed in so that way it scales a little better, but on the bottom side of the screen, so the south side is where the road is, and then you come down is also where there's a northern array to the northwest of this locus. And what happens is there's a little depression right here, so this is where the water starts to naturally funnel down. And the extent of this riprap berm actually spans this, what's a 432 contour. So from the LiDAR out there, almost kind of creating a miniature pond
Behind it,
behind it,
on the
within
array side.
within the array.
That's
And
where
it
you're
won't flow
proposing.
around it, right?
Right, so water will pond against it before it has to do that, but inevitably will either seep through the berm. The berm is going to be a crushed stone matrix. But yeah,
And just above existing grade, right?
just
No
above existing
excavation.
grade in order to fill in just that low area.
Okay, so it's 3/4 crushed stone.
A little bit of filter fabric over that just to make sure everything that's going through is clean, and then 1 inch on top in order to hold it all down. So that's what's going on in our detail over here. We've got the 3/4
Yeah.
inch little filter fabric on the flow inlet side, and then 1 inch over the top.
Okay.
So before the solar arrays were installed, what did the water do?
The water was flowing there in a similar way than what we expected.
Yeah, it seems to me there's nothing that this array has done to cause any problem. I fail to see what the problem that this caused, unless there's
Well, there, I think that,
substantially more runoff.
I think that it could just be an understanding of, or there wasn't good baseline documentation to understand how much water was going across the road in the first point. And now that there's more of a focal point on this, with the array being a new construction activity, or previously approved construction activity, now we're seeing potential for artificially increased runoff, if you will.
And the owner can fix the problem through you guys, right, to mitigate it.
Right.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, I'm just asking, I'm just curious how we got here. But I'm okay with it.
Everyone all set? Any comments?
Sure.
Any other comments? Okay, if I get a motion to approve the minor project exemption,
so moved.
in a second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? All set? Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Hegigi, 30 Stony Brook Road. This is a request for a 1-year extension permit.
Not sure if
The order of
anyone's-
conditions.
Not sure if anyone's here. Dave, you gonna handle that? Yep. Thank you.
So Mo, homeowner owns, house number 30, lot 23. He can't be here this evening. I think he's looking for a 1-year extension. His house is very far along in construction. Driveway is pretty much prepped, septic is in, and he got sort of caught with the late season with trying to get lumen seed down for soil. So he's looking for this season and fall season to finish it off. So
Okay.
all the major grading has been done. Driveway's intact, hay is up, silt is up,
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
Any questions? If I get a motion to approve the 1-year extension,
So moved.
and this is for 30 Stony Brook, in a second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And I think we have
Staying on
another one, so you
33?
can, you can stay right here.
Is this you?
So this is 33 Stony Brook. This is a request for a 2-year extension permit.
Almost across the street, homeowner,
Hi.
33 for 6B, house under construction. Not far along in the way of site work. Driveway's in, but doesn't have a base on it yet. System has not been installed, well is in. They're working on the house now, so.
Okay?
They were hoping to do some septic towards the late fall, but ran out of time as well. It's just,
Alright.
town shut them down.
Where you living now?
Hopkinton.
Oh, you're still in Hockley?
Mezzanine
Take it.
Circle.
Good. Okay. Any questions from the commission? If I can get a motion to extend the order of conditions for 2 years for 33 Stony Brook.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
Thank you,
good luck.
appreciate it. Thank you.
We have one more for you, Dave.
Two more.
Two more.
Oh, two more. So this next one is 34 Stony Brook Road, and it's a request for a 3-year
3-year.
extension.
Can we get a 4-year?
Ken is here as well. That's Ken's lot, lot 21.
Okay.
Um,
Guys, neighbors?
Yeah, neighbors, yeah, good friends.
So the lot's been cleared, hay is up. Some of the earthwork has been done.
A lot of it, yeah.
Yep, and Ken hasn't found a buyer yet in order to start construction.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why we want to ask for the 3 years. It might take a year, and we could avoid somebody from coming in 2 years from now saying, I need a year extension.
Yep,
so.
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, questions
But
from
the
the,
lot's in really great shape.
good, all right. Questions from the commission? I get a motion to approve the 3-year extension of the order of conditions for 34 Stony Brook.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And then
36.
36 Stony Brook, a request for a 1-year extension permit.
This is the foundation lot. They've been working diligently through the winter on this. House is very, very far along. Driveway's installed, utilities installed, wells installed. A lot of the backyard's been shaped. It's just at the top of the screen.
Yep. Okay.
It's kind of an old picture. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, house is up. And system would be going in shortly, driveway would be going in shortly. And I would think Ed Tucker's the builder, based on past experiences. He moves quite quickly, so I would think things would be done this fall. And then if worse comes to worse, he needs the growing season in the spring.
Okay. Sounds good. Any questions from the commission? I get a motion to approve the 1-year request for 36 Stony Brook.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Great,
All
thank you.
right. Yeah, that's an old picture. The last time was
It is
updated.
definitely.
2019.
Yeah.
Was this last year?
All right.
Thank
Good luck. Yep. Okay, so we have an emergency certification
Yeah.
ratification for
Right.
Echo Lake.
Yep, exactly.
They had to do a little bit more work out there than they thought.
Yes, they ran into some crumbling situations, so, let's see.
So is that in Hopkinton?
Yes, yeah. So, here's the request they provided us.
My God.
That's a photos. Yeah, so.
There was some rocks that had fallen down, right?
Exactly, into their
Oh, I
situation.
remember this.
It was
Yeah.
down in here, yep.
Is that a
So-
ship?
So
Buried
they
ship?
removed the rocks and
Sunken
fixed the
ship?
pump.
And then fix the walls too, here we go. So, they needed
Well, they
to-
damaged the walls.
these were just starting to fall apart. I think some of this fell onto the mechanism they have in here. So they needed just to reconstruct the walls to keep them from further deteriorating.
And it's pretty low out there right now, so they wanna get it done.
But it was all underwater.
Oh, was
The
it?
work, they had to bring in people to do the work underwater.
Oh. When did they do that?
I issued the emergency certificate. See the dates. So.
January?
Yeah, February to March, February 3rd to March 4th.
Wow, it must have been cold.
I know, exactly.
Okay, any questions from the commission? If I can get a motion to ratify the emergency certification as discussed.
So moved.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Aho 42 West Elm Street, there was an abutter report of standing water.
Yes. At the meeting last time, but I don't know
standing water out there now?
I haven't been out there since I took the photos, so.
The house is finished, occupied?
No.
Oh, it's not?
I don't think it's occupied, and they have, rough driveway down, so, let's see. Where was my photos? Yep, right here. So, you still see it's a gravel base, and the complaint was right in through here. And if I can bring up a plan, so this is the section right here, and I was out in January. So, and then there's, if I can bring up a plan, 'cause I thought he sketched in a butter sketch plan where he was guessing it was happening, so he was guessing it was down here, and you would have had, proposed culvert right in here, and then you got all the stormwater, you know, BMPs along here, so I think what the commission was told was the water would be able to go across the driveway to make it basically,
To the other side there?
yeah, you know, so I think what was determined was the water would be able to make it across the way into the BMP, and then any water that would have come down would have hit the culvert here to continue on to the wetland, so I don't know if, from what the abutter was saying, he's never really seen standing water there, so he's
Okay.
wondering, you know, has the driveway been great, you know, is it a rough? And they brought it up, you know, we're not
Yeah.
quite sure
Yeah.
if they
It was
brought it up.
properly
Yeah, if they
constructed.
brought it up higher, just to be able to get the machines in and out, and then when they go to finalize it, are they gonna take material out? I'm not quite sure, but the builder didn't respond to the abutter's concerns, so I don't know if the commission wants to.
Yeah, can we,
reach out.
can we send a letter to him, Don?
Yep, sure.
Just let him know that,
You know,
you know, it was an issue that was raised to us, you know, and we wanna know,
Yeah, is that gonna be a
Just-
problem going forward,
Yeah,
or is it
exactly.
temporary? All right,
you know, what mitigation are they gonna, what corrective action are they gonna
Right.
implement so that we don't continue to see it?
yeah,
right?
I assume like the engineer designed it, you know, the engineer might be able to say, well, we're still under construction, or, you know, be able to give you guys at least some sort of feedback.
Okay, that sound okay to everyone?
Partly when they wash together, because you more than two lots, and you don't want.
Okay. So Prime Properties, we have 3 applications, 47 Stony Brook, 49 Stony Brook, and 47 and 49 Stony Brook, which is a common driveway. So I'll just read all 3 of them, Dave, and then we can go into it. Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, at 7:30 at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Prime Properties Limited Partnership to construct a new single-family house with associated site work. The location is 47 Stony Brook Road, assessors map R3, block 54. It's a portion of lots 12 and 13. For 49 Stony Brook, the Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, at 7:30 at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Prime Properties Limited Partnership to construct a new single-family house with associated site work. Location 49 Stony Brook Road, assessors map R3, block 54, which was a portion of lots 13 and 14. And for the common driveway for 47 and 49 Stony Brook Road, the Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, 7:30 PM at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Prime Properties Limited Partnership to construct a common driveway with associated site work, 47 Stony Brook Road, assessors map R3, block 54, a portion of lots 12 and 13, and for 49 Stony Brook Road, assessors map R3, block 54, a portion of lots 13 and 14. That was a mouthful.
Well, thank you. We're done.
Ken Marsdes, Prime Properties, Dave Marquardt. The commission has not seen this before.
Okay.
Lot 12 and Lot 13 are up the other end of the site on the northeast end, up by Woodward Drive. Southwood Rod and Gun is our neighbor to the north and to the east. Ken's lots are to the west, not developed as of yet. Back in December of 19, Ken presented a plan to planning board. The board may remember, about a year and a half or so ago, we were before the board for Lot 14B, which used to sit right here in the front part of Lot 12. We went before the planning board to remove that lot and take part of it and put it with 12 and 13 to make 2 lots instead of 3.
Okay.
So we've had discussions with fire chief about this common driveway. We've had some meetings with Dawn about the lot, the location of the driveway, and some buffer zone discussions and so forth.
So the original subdivision plan had the 3 lots, now we have 2.
Actually, the original subdivision plan used to have about 7 lots right along the back side of this.
Okay.
It incorporated part of the Southborough Rod and Gun. Ken had an agreement with them, that since went away. So in a sense, I think we've lost 2 lots here,
Right.
plus that one.
3 lots.
So we're down to basically lot 16, 13, 12, 11, and 10.
Okay.
And we're not developing 8 or 9. So on this end of the project, we're really looking at 4 lots, 5 lots,
Okay.
versus what I think would be 8 or 9. Okay.
So 8 and 9 will be
One is,
converted to open space?
one has already been converted to open space, and Ken retains that one.
Okay.
Okay.
I do own this parcel up in here, so maybe, but,
Get access at some point.
yeah, but it's highly improbable, but
Okay.
keep it open. No, and then there's no wetlands up there at all, or issues later. for you
Okay,
guys.
it's
Yeah.
all upland. Okay, very good.
So that little plan that you have is almost to scale. It's a combination compiled plan of lots 12 and 13. So we'll sort of get to that in a second, but lot 12, the lot 12 that you see on the paper is this big pink line here. We have 2 wetland systems. We have an isolated wetland here. We have a bordering vegetated wetland here as well, 25, 50, and 100-foot buffer. In our discussions with Dawn and Anna, we elected to make 3 filings out of this. Lot 12 would be its own, lot 13 would be its own, and then 12 and 13 for the common driveway. So we chose what we thought were some limits to the filing of lot 12. So this big blue line right here, common driveway is here. This big blue line right here would be the limit. This would be the limit. Buffer zone would be here. So what we're talking about for lot 12 is this bit here, portion of the septic. The well is outside it, recharge units outside it, a little bit of the driveway, just up adjacent to the house, and a little bit of the house. So this is about 10,000 square feet of work in there.
Okay.
This is wooded. And septic has been approved by Board of Health. And moving to 13, right next door. One we just talked about was right here.
Mhm.
Driveway continues to here, house is here, wetlands here, buffer zone is here, just a little bit of the system, retaining wall for the system, driveway for the lot and the house, recharge and well are outside it.
Can you see this for a second, David?
So the phase line for 13 would be this blue line, this little bit of work in here, okay? And then the common driveway certainly would be from here back to the road.
Okay.
This is,
That's grading, right?
Exactly.
Through there?
yep,
And that'll be, once it's graded and the work is done, left to revegetate?
yep, yep.
Okay.
So we've actually, so there's our common driveway, 16 foot wide. It's 404 feet to here.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're looking to do is we're actually looking to phase it. So we're looking to put the pavement right about at the pen, an extra 25 feet, which is required for, like, turning for the fire truck, into 12. We're not looking to cut this until we're ready to build 13.
Okay.
So we're looking to build 12 first, and then the common driveway. And when we're ready, we'll cut 13.
Okay.
So erosion control will be along this blue line here. PIB is on the eastern side of that, all the way up. We were thinking of not doing a PIB for 12, because it's adjacent to the common driveway. So we had all our PIB on that one side. So in our discussions with the fire chief, he would require a turnout area. It was one of the concerns Matt had. We have the turnout area on the right-hand side. We took advantage of this little vacant, if you will, area where the buffer zones really don't come together.
Mm-hmm.
We put the turnout here. Steve has this drawing as well. I haven't talked to the chief yet about this, but it's very much the same drawing we had before. He was the one that had suggested the turnout.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, when we first met with Don, we had the proposed driveway in here. Vegetated wetland here, isolated wetland here. So that was one of our trumps that we were getting rid of 14, which is right here. So in a sense, we moved a house, a driveway, a system, and a well, almost all in the buffer zone. And so, all said and done, this is a reduction of about just under 17,000 square feet, which is about 30% of buffer zone through our buffer zone analysis we did back in 17.
Okay. You have that spreadsheet on?
I do, so there's the overall plan, and I was able to provide us a revised, there was the old one from 17. And here's the latest that he's provided, talking about the reductions.
Yeah, so we've gone from 55 to 38. Combination of moving the driveway over and the removal of 14.
Yep, okay. So the driveway, the common driveway is 16 feet wide.
Yes. So
With
it's,
a proposed 12-foot wide turnout.
so the driveway does not have berms, and it's banked, so the left side is higher than the right, so it's gonna sort of dissipate
Sheet
on that.
into the wetland?
Sheet to the wetland. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that looks good to me. Any questions or comments from the commission?
I'm just seeing Matt had a few comments in his letter.
Should have all three sheets, Matt's comments, 47, 49, and the common driveway.
As I recall, they were fairly minor, right?
I think the biggest questions were,
Calculations?
the infiltration system, but also he's asking if any consideration had been given to putting the, I guess, pulling it out of the 50-foot, obviously it's really tight up here, but putting the PIB along the 50 instead of at the 25. Not changing the limit of work, but once
Oh,
work's
okay.
done, putting the PIB up at the top of the grading.
Once the grading is done?
Yeah, so you'd have some
Yeah.
temporary disturbance there.
Yeah, we could,
Yeah.
that would be at 13, or 13. We have a walkway that's there, so we could perhaps move the walkway a little bit away, and then we could move the PIB to the, near the 50-foot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
50 feet.
49, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
In the way of infiltration, the sizes of the infiltration were dictated back in the study from Don Preventure.
Right.
So we're just sort of going on that same guidelines all the way through with the groundwater recharge study that he did on behalf of Ken some years ago.
Okay. Maybe you can just.
So those would be sized in accordance with
Well,
Don's?
he gave us variations.
Okay.
Don Preventure gave us variations, different sizing.
Depending on the house size?
It was based on offset to groundwater, and he had it as a stone bed versus an actual chamber.
Okay.
Chambers, so he gave us conversions to go from the
Bed to
stone
the
bed
chamber.
to chambers.
Okay.
So do the plans at least reference Don's,
I
Don's report?
I think that they
Good.
do as
All
part
right.
of, there is that report that's out there that
All right.
requires 7 lots out of Highland Park to be.
Right, and I can
have
probably take
recharge.
the
Oh,
old,
that's definitely there, yeah.
yeah, because the file goes, I think the
Yeah.
original is, we're talking 1186, right, Dave? That's where ProVenture's report would be, deep funnel for the
Yeah,
roadway,
it
right?
was part of the extension
1186.
from when Ken did,
Right.
yeah.
So I could probably grab
Probably
Don's
12.
report from 1186 and throw it in, because not all the houses have infiltration, there's only some of them.
Right.
So I
Yep.
can try and at least grab Don's report and make it part of the record,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And then if you can
Yeah.
just verify that it's referenced on the plan, Dave?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if it's
okay.
not,
Yep.
just submit
So
us a
both these
revised.
are both these houses getting them?
Yes, they are.
All right, so,
Yep.
yeah, so,
So
I'll
the
put it
same
up.
comment.
If you guys order it, issue an order, I'll reference Don's, plan in the order as well.
Okay, and then if you can just submit a revised plan showing the relocation of that PIB there.
And then he had a comment about the foundation drain.
Yeah,
That was
we didn't put riprap there, so we could add it as spill detail at the outfalls of the drain at lot 13.
I don't know that grandfather go on long before the bylaw.
Certainly all the flags will be rehung when we get to that point.
Yeah, that was the other comment.
One of his comments, he was wondering if
The outlet protection for the discharge drain.
yeah, that's what we, just talked about. I have the sub-catchment map. Jeff, here's the sub-catchment map, the one with the subdivision originally.
Okay.
Sort of help you out a little bit. This lot here is on the lot next door.
Sorry. So that's gone, right?
That one was there. That one was there. So you can see all these blocks. House, 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 here.
Yep.
So we actually had a connector road at one point. That the planning board wanted at some point, but that got removed.
Okay.
So this house is gone, this house is gone. So here's 13, here's 12, and then here's 11, here's 10,
Got it,
and here's
okay.
9, here's 8.
And the driveway comes up right through here.
Exactly, that's that's exactly right. It's a common
Okay.
driveway. At one point, there was a common driveway here, common driveway here. So we've gone through the planning process and you folks with the drainage study way back as far as Ellen Shagnon was.
Yep.
So you should have that, but you can take that.
Okay. So the flags will be reset or reflagged prior to the work.
Yep.
So that'll be conditioned on. I think that covers everything.
I think they touched upon this. This was the comments for the common driveway. Something about why it's so wide, and I think we touched on it because it was
Well-
conversations with the fire department, right?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
required to have the driveway to
I
be
don't think
16.
Matt wasn't in the NOI, you know,
Right.
so I think he was questioning that.
Yeah, and the common driveway is a good thing, obviously. So, okay. Any questions or comments from the commission?
Are these part of the lots that are grandfathered?
Yes, so you have a 25-foot limit of work, 50 limit of structure,
Okay.
correct?
Yep.
And the PIB was being moved to conform more to the 50-foot?
Yep, one lot, that's
Mhm.
correct.
Ted, Jim, you guys good?
Yeah.
Of course, we're
I think
good.
they'd probably should keep the slopes up in here, you know, vegetated, but instead of getting trees in there, might start getting close to the house, so might be something like, you know, it'd be nice to have a shrub habitat on that,
Yeah.
on the grade, but not having
Where are you, Don?
Where
Where?
they're bringing up the, you know,
Where the PIB
where
is
the
being
PI's coming
moved.
up closer, so then you'd have
Yep.
a naturally vegetated slope. You know, it'd be nice to have it just like a shrub, or you might, if you
Okay.
start getting tall trees on that slope, it might become
gotcha.
problematic to the house, so.
They'll need to be removed in 10 or 15
So
years. you
we
know.
could probably make, you know, note that, you know, on the, where you.
Melissa will be
where they
chair
built the
by then.
slopes.
Sounds like a no.
But you can do that as a minor project.
So you have to
Yeah.
put this in the
Just
back
been
of
trying to
your
get rid of
head.
this chair for a long time, I know that.
Put that in the
Yeah, no,
back of your
he's gonna be
head,
here
so
a while.
10 years from now, when they come back, when the owner comes back to remove the
Yeah.
trees, you can say,
Yeah.
you're only supposed to put bushes in there.
Yep.
Yeah, I promise you won't be here in 10, I won't be here in 10 years, Melissa.
Okay, all right. So we have the special conditions, the plan will be resubmitted, the PIB will be moved.
So we think at the same time, when we'll submit a letter to you guys, requesting for certificate of compliance for 14B, take it out of the mix.
Yeah,
Remove-
to
so we
make it
can remove the
invalid,
d-
yeah, an invalid, yeah.
Yep. We'll do that at the same time.
Perfect. Okay,
Question.
yep. So do we have any questions or comments from the audience on this? No?
Still don't have a DEP file number, so.
Yeah, we don't have the DEP file numbers yet. All right, so if I can get a motion to close and approve the notice of intent for 47 Stony Brook Road as discussed.
So moved.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. If I can get a motion to close and approve the notice of intent for 49 Stony Brook Road as discussed.
So moved. Oh, you take it. Second.
Jim's got the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. And if I can get a motion to close and approve the notice of intent for the common driveway at 47 and 49 Stony Brook Road as discussed.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, opposed, and we're good.
Great, thank you very much.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you. You're welcome. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. We're winding
A
down.
lot of work
We're winding down.
still out
It's
there.
enough. It's only been in 30 years.
Close to it, right?
Yeah, since the beginning, absolutely.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah, we just read the next one and then continue it out?
Yep. This is for the dog park,
Yeah,
right?
the town, right.
The Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020 at 7:30 at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a request for determination of applicability, followed by the Hopkinton Recreation Department to determine the limit and regulatory status of on-site wetland resources. The location is a portion of 66B Fruit Street, AKA the Fruit Street property. Fruit Street Town property. Assessors map R6, Block 8, Lot 0. We'll continue that out until the next meeting, which will be March 24th, correct, Tom?
Yes.
All right. We'll get back to the work session items since we're ahead of schedule here. So, review of response letters from the LNG facility.
Yeah, and you guys have reached out to them
Yep.
for, we didn't really understand.
The firefighting foam.
Yeah, exactly. And, we didn't understand, there were at least three different entities out there, and we didn't know if they were all doing their own thing out there.
Right.
So they were able to,
Yeah, products.
yeah, so they were able to give us an overview of,
So I saw that it was originally reported to the DEP,
Yeah.
but then the MSDS was submitted to the DEP. There were no fluorinated
Exactly.
hydrocarbons, and there were
Right.
no reportable
Thresholds,
thresholds
yeah,
that were triggered.
Yeah, so when I first became aware of it, I thought I might be dealing with issuing an emergency certificate for a cleanup, but then everything that came back, they said, no, there wasn't anything, to that level, but
Reportable, yeah.
But basically, it was going in, we had it happened in the past, the commission was aware of back when we were doing the permitting phasing, and then this came up again, but we knew it was Eversource, but then it was noted as Air Products, so we were confused, like, well, Eversource has a protocol, how come you guys don't? You know,
Right.
So we wanted them to tell us where they were at, and they basically said that they are part and parcel, like Air Products was, I guess, they contracted out, and it was human error.
Right,
by,
with the valve.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they've able to, it was a different release than what they had in the past, so.
Right, and then they retrained the guys that do the testing every month with the system, so that was good.
Yep, and then the other entity said that, they don't, engage in that type of activity. These folks here, even though they're up on site, Tennessee
Right,
Gas was
yeah.
saying that, they're not, part
They
and
don't do the,
parcel, so-
they don't do the foam testing.
Right, exactly. So it seemed to address, what,
Yeah, I was satisfied. It took a while to go through all the information that was submitted, but,
right.
yeah, I'm satisfied with the response.
Okay.
Any questions from the commission?
No.
Okay. Review the status of the bylaw filing fee calculation worksheets.
Yes, so, as I know the vice chairs might be aware, the finance department in July of the new fiscal year, F20, starting July 1st, 2019, said they wanted the consultant fees now to be run through a 53G account, where historically going back, the commission's only had access to 53E and a halves. So through that process, so now you're looking at two different types of ways of processing the finance. So if you look at what we do currently here, and I got a handout in your sheets, these consultant fees go back to a model that was constructed back in 2003. So these fees haven't been adjusted since then. And it was always, both the filing fees and the consultant fees were in a 53 and a half regime. So now, finance department says, no, break it up. We want consultant fees in a G, and we want the filing fees in the same one that we're using. So we're noticing that this model from 03 isn't really jiving well with the other one. So I asked Matt to look at, how is this, not reflected, taking in account the changes that the finance department just brought to us. So what he suggested
Was what's highlighted in yellow?
is, so what we suggested was changing it to reflect it as it's shown here. So, blow this up. But basically, revising just the consultant fees to better in line with the 53G. And basically, in this count, everything would just, if none of it's used up, it would go back to the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense to have it just before it was always, the commission always wanted to estimate it as low as possible. Here,
And then you have to chase them for the money when it goes over.
yeah, so that's what we're starting to see now. The model for 53E was so low, now we're chasing them down, and it would be easier if we just had a little bit more, and then when the job's done, just give it back. So
Right.
it's a whole different way of looking at it.
Yep, I think
So-
that makes sense. It's less,
I'm not an accountant, so it's just like, I'm just trying to.
and you're not a collections person either, right?
So, Don, on one side is the existing, and on the other side highlighted
Correct,
is.
yeah, and the
new one.
existing goes back to 2003. The commission hasn't made any adjustments. So now, we're looking at the change that the finance department said we had to go through. So now we're noticing, because it's an apple and an orange. Before, we were just dealing with apples. So now this orange, we think, needs to be revised.
apples are the new
That's
orange.
finance talk, you know, that's how good that's about
Yeah.
as far as I know.
CPAs can use that kind of.
Thank you.
Us lay people can't.
So, and I think these numbers are in the regs, so we would then have to
Public
have,
hearing.
yeah, and then we were thinking if there's any other changes, I think there is some language in the reg we wanted to revise.
Yep.
So, we figure if we wanted to go
Just
down that
roll it
road.
all into one
Yeah,
hearing.
yeah, and then have it in one hearing, and just say we'd like to, you know, make some revisions to the regs.
Okay. All right, this looks good to me, Don. Thank you for pulling it together. With Matt, is everyone,
Makes
everyone
sense.
okay with it?
Yeah, makes sense.
Greek to me. Greek
All right.
Greek.
Shakespeare?
Just don't build anything that'll cost you money. How's that?
So we have a notice of intended sale under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 61A of 7 School Street. This was a request for comments.
Yes.
This is
I don't
Center
get
School,
that.
right?
Yeah.
How is that land, how is that
I don't
property
know.
in 61A?
I guess it's big enough, I guess.
But there's a house in it. It's
I
all
know,
one parcel.
I know.
That's
This
okay.
was the oddest 61 I've ever seen, you know, so
I don't know.
basically here's.
It's gotta be
here's the
forestry,
lot.
right?
And
No.
so this is the
not
this
agricultural.
is the axis, because I've been down here before on a
no
previous owner
agriculture.
when they were doing,
no.
like, it was either
Recreation.
Project Change or an RDA, we did something minor,
There's
so
no
I remember
61A
this
for
lot.
recreation.
So that's the only access, there are no
Something, 'cause my
town
mom's land was in
parcels
it.
or, you know, state land, obviously across the street, you know, you got Lake White out there, but, and with the limited access, and the house right here, and then the remainder of the lot this way is fairly wet. I think there's some uplands here, but I really don't.
You're not gonna be able to get to it.
We're
Yeah,
not-
you know, I don't
we're
see
not
this
abutting.
getting subdivided and turned into something else, so I really don't think it's in the town's, you know, from the commission's standpoint, why would we wanna purchase this, you know?
Well,
agree,
so,
yeah.
just curiously, to me anyway, if you look in the northwest, a little, relatively regular shaped parcel on the corner of, what is that, School and Winter?
Down
Right,
here,
no, to the left more.
right here?
The town owns that,
That, yeah.
for
and
some reason.
It's down across the street, I just didn't.
No, I know, but
Yeah,
it's
I was
just-
like.
town
I was
owns
just
this
looking
parcel in
if
the middle of nowhere.
I just looked if there was any direct
Nope.
abutting parcels owned by the town or the state or, it's open
Right.
space, and it's not, it's all private property.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so,
That little lot that's town owned there, that's where they wanted to put the parking
Yeah.
lot, right?
and.
Parking
remember
lot?
the, discussion,
Vegetable
the
stand.
yeah,
Yeah,
the farm
restaurant.
stand,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember there was a discussion
Parking lot
about a
for what?
potential farm stand.
Downtown?
For the,
Yeah, years ago, it was
you
like
know,
5,
you know
6
Long
years
Life
ago.
Farm, that's right there?
Across the street.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
wanted to set up like a fruit stand
So why do
there.
we own it though?
The town
Who
owns it.
knows?
I don't know why.
Yeah, I could try and.
No,
find
that's
it.
okay, I just.
I don't think
find it
it's
curious.
managed by the Concom, so it's not one of the ones I
Yeah, I
don't
know.
kinda know.
For whatever it's worth, Open Space reviewed that lot and expressed no interest.
Yeah.
Okay, so I agree, Don, if we wanna submit that,
Okay, comments that,
that comment to Elaine.
all right.
Alright, review House Bill number H4465, the amendment to the Conservation Land Tax Credit.
I think Ed put this on the
Yeah, I probably put that, requested that, I think I can remember.
So what do we got, Ed?
So I think, since I can't remember, because I'm old and infirm,
And it happened 2 days ago.
Table it to the next meeting?
we could do that.
Okay.
For the
And
next
I'll-
meeting, could you produce a copy?
Hopefully,
and
hopefully
I
he'll
will-
forget about it.
I will try to
Just kidding.
come through this time. I do know
It looks a
that,
bunch of, it looks a bunch of legalese. you know,
yeah,
so-
I do know that our legislators are both signed on to it.
Is that it, Tom?
That's it. This is the bill. I'll be honest, I haven't read it.
Ed's gonna give us a summary at the next meeting.
All right.
I'll tell you, it's the greatest thing since sliced
So
bread.
this for 2 to 3 million.
Okay, so no public forum requests this
No.
week. I think we covered everything else in the work session.
Great.
And when's the open
Yeah,
space,
a lot of those
SVT?
Yeah, I might have a conflict on the
Fifth.
April 7th
Fifth.
meeting.
Okay, do I have to be
Alright,
here?
yeah,
You, thank you.
Of April.
I would
Okay.
say put me as not.
So we'll meet before.
I won't be here March 25th. I mean, yes, March 24th.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Janine, not here.
Well, me either then.
The fifth. Jim, the fifth.
Oh, which one? The fifth?
The fifth is the open space, SVT, all conservation land credit form. for lack of a better word.
If you got a bunch of land, you would have gotten a note.
Right.
If you don't have a bunch of land, you haven't gotten a
I
note.
didn't get a note, so I guess I
I
don't
didn't
I don't have enough land. Okay, I think we're close enough for Harding, 70 Spring Street. This is a notice of intent for a single-family home.
Matt's comments in your handouts.
Yeah. I need to read this.
Yes, you do. Ready to bring it up?
Good evening. I just need to read this before we get started. Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020 at 7:30 PM at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Marcus Harding to construct a new single-family house with a stream crossing and associated site work. The location is 70 Spring Street, Assessors Map R10, Block 16, Lot A. Good evening.
Peter Bemis, Engineering Design Consultants here on behalf of Mr. Harding. So this property was the subject of a notice of intent when I was a very young man, 1991.
Yes.
188, 565, and I actually didn't realize we had an order. I knew we had an approved septic system, but Dawn had reminded me we actually had an order. Never went to record, so it's not at the Registry of Deeds. Dr. Borelli was the gentleman that owned this home that we did the work for. Mr. Harding bought that home and purchased the land next door because he didn't want anyone to live next door to him. Mr. Harding is now ready to, I guess, move on and retire. He's probably going to sell the homestead at some point, and now he wants to develop this lot. Wetlands are a bit different from 79 to today, from 91 to today. The wetlands on this site were flagged as part of an ORAD was filed for the adjacent property, and they flagged these wetlands, and we went out and looked at it and said, well, it's pretty reasonable. So we surveyed everything in and put that forward. There are two stream channels that come through the property. One comes off of 68 Spring Street, which is to the east. It comes under an existing crossing that's located right here. Comes down and then connects with the main channel, if you will, that's coming off of the land to the west. Land coming down off of the upland. Basically, this land goes all the way back to the Mass Pike, that property, and comes down and ties in and then goes through into the Whitehall Lake. The proposal that we have here is to come through this portion of the property. This area actually has a great deal of knotweed through it, so it's kind of I would say just it's a degraded area. So that's why we came through here. Originally, when we came through this area on the site. But having gone back and looked at it again, it made sense to come through here. And we proposed the crossing here, that's the narrowest part of the channel, and then to come up into the upland here where we would site the house. The soil absorption system is located here. We've done soil testing with the Board of Health, and we have filed for a soil absorption permit from them. We don't have that yet. We also have a well proposal with them as well, and again, they haven't issued that. But I would anticipate by the next meeting we would have that for you. DEP hasn't issued a file number for this yet either. We did make an inquiry with them to find out what the status was. They have cashed the check, just haven't got the number yet. So I'd expect that by the next meeting as well. So to show you in the wetland limits, again in the green, adjacent to these intermittent stream channels that go through here. And the limit of work is located here in the magenta color. We've tried to stay as far away as we can. For the most part, we're running along that 50-foot disturbance line. This lot was created back in 90, I believe, was the actual year of creation, so it was well in it before your local bylaw. It's been of record for some time. There were 3 lots actually cut out of the original homestead lot, and he had more land. They just wanted to create 3 lots. That's all they were looking for back then when Dr. Burley was selling the land.
Okay.
So, we know there were comments from Lucas Associates, have no problem with any of them. Matt suggested a field visit to look, because he had some questions about the wetland limits there. I have no problem reviewing those with him further. He was concerned about the area we're going through, because there is the Japanese knotweed there, and he'd want to make sure that we have some program for sequestering that. I have no problem with expanding that area, actually, to take out more of it, if possible, so that we can put back something that's a little bit more beneficial to the buffer zone than the knotweed that's there. I don't recall anything else being there, although he did suggest, well, we didn't file as a limited project, again, because a lot of it was already in existence. We'd already granted an order of conditions some time ago, even though it was never acted upon.
Right.
And it just seemed reasonable that there would be a lot here. We're not trying to cram something in where something shouldn't have been before. There was always a proposal to put a house in this location. He did suggest we do an alternatives analysis. I mean, it would be an alternative to cross here. It would obviously impact the existing homestead. What I might suggest is that we just eliminate that crossing that's there as part of the proposal for the crossing
Right.
here.
Like
Makes more
daylighting it.
sense. Yeah, we just
and
open that
doing-
back up
and
again.
if you need to do replication, because I know you had some concerns about where you had
Yeah,
it, so.
right, and then he
Yeah.
was concerned about the width. So
Yeah,
the cross-section is
That's what
there.
jumped out at me.
Right, and so we're not trying to make it longer than we need to, and again, maybe another alternative to look at this, because we deliberately did not run a water line from the street, because there is town water in this section of roadway. We decided to put a well in, so we didn't have to come in through and disturb more than we needed to. So we could possibly look at a bulkhead on either side, so we could keep the open channel, and then just suspend that section as we cross.
Yeah, why is it proposed at 22 feet?
It's really just the cross-section so that you have a shoulder, not even a shoulder, just resolving grade, because the incline of the channel through there, there's a gradient, so that's why we did the cross-section.
Okay.
So you can see this is a 12-foot wide driveway, and when you add, basically by the time you get down, you're 5 feet on either side just to resolve grade and provide coverage.
Got it,
No, we're not trying to make it any wider than it needs to be.
Has fire department looked at this yet?
I have not spoke with them, no.
They might wanna comment.
Yeah, that's pretty far back.
Crossings, right?
Okay.
They wanna get feedback from the fire, just cause the
This will
vans
support,
too.
yeah, this will
Yeah.
support their fire apparatus, and we can show
So they'd
one
want
of
at
their-
least
their-
20, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think they're wider than 12.
They'd probably want the crossing at
12
least
feet
at 20
isn't gonna
hours.
be wide
The
enough.
fire department.
You gotta
So
make sure
then
the road,
I would put head walls on either side, and that way we've given them their width, but we wouldn't expand it further.
Yeah, cause they've got revised road, driveway regs.
Okay.
So you might wanna
All
make
right.
sure.
All right,
Yeah, go look at the
all right.
load
I can
rating, too.
seek out to the fire safety officer and confirm what they want as a minimum. So if that's the case, then I'll probably stick with the culverts, and we'll just do head walls on either side and give them their full width. I don't know if we
Yeah,
had to
so we
really
just
pave
need-
that full width, but I'd give them a shoulder that was drivable.
Yep. And then the stream crossing standards need to be discussed.
speaking of fire, given the length of that driveway, would we expect there'd have to be a turnout?
So, it would be good to get feedback from the fire department.
Yeah, I do have a side entry here, and I can show them the fire apparatus turning there. I may have to expand it a bit more, but I'll just get that whole detail done with them.
Can I just take a look at that plan, Mr. Venus?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. So how big is the house?
That's about a 3,200 square foot house. It's not really large. It's 2-story. I didn't, we actually grabbed its typical house that we have and put it in there. They didn't give me one. He's looking to sell this lot.
2-car garage or 3-car garage?
I believe it's shown as a 2.
Okay.
But, I guess,
It's certainly not, we're not trying to expand that lot more than we need to develop it.
But they have submitted a waiver request, and you're not meeting the limit of work, correct?
Well, because I had asked you about that, because this lot was a pre-existing lot, but you don't break that criteria out any
No,
longer.
because it wasn't part of a subdivision.
Well, right, that's what I had talked to you about, was it is a subdivision that was approved by the planning board, but it was not a,
Yeah, it's an A and R.
it's an A and R lot,
Right,
correct?
so
And
no,
there
it-
used to be some provision for that, but you don't have that in the bylaw.
No, it's never a provision for the A and R lots, but if it was part of an engineered subdivision
Right.
that went through the planning board, those were the grandfathered. he has submitted a waiver request. I think your structures are your house.
I kept everything out as far as I
It's outside
could.
of 50, but they're encroaching.
So we do have some resolving of grade now. I suppose I can narrow that up and put like a retaining wall in or something, but at some point it gets to be a bit of an engineered lot, if you will, versus something that's kind of a little more natural. But I know you folks are sensitive to your bylaw and how you want to enforce it. I think the history on this is the lot was created well in advance of the bylaw. There was actually an order of conditions
It
issued.
doesn't matter though.
Yeah, it's the house. So I love side-loaded and back-loaded garages, but could you front-load this and save some?
That may make it more difficult for the fire apparatus turnaround, but I could look at it.
With maybe a turnout
Yeah.
along the way? I know
Yeah.
it looks better to have a
It's not,
side-loaded
it's
garage.
not imperative to do the side entry.
So that may take away some of that.
Can this be pushed towards the back any further?
A bit, we were just trying to give it some yard and some grading, but I could do that if you'd prefer to see it back further. I wanna make it work for Mr. Harding. He's owned it for a long time and
Well,
he bought it as a
you
building
can
lot.
try to make it work, or you can propose something that won't get approved.
No, I don't, I wanna get it approved, Mr. Chairman, you know that. And I'm
At some
certainly
point it
willing to
gets-
work with you folks to
At some
make
point
it.
it gets
Under the
pretty
bylaw,
steep
it does
back
say,
there.
if you can reduce the scale and scope of the project,
Okay.
you have to, the commission has to.
All right, well, then I think we could certainly get that part out of the 50-foot, and then by the same token, by moving the garage, with the garage facing,
Yeah, look
we
at
could
the
do that,
orientation.
and we can move that out of the 50. The only spot that I'm gonna have it would be the septic system grading here, and I probably could narrow it a bit, and we can put an impermeable barrier versus putting a retaining wall in, just so it'd be a little bit more of a natural grade there. Because we can just let that slope go natural when we're done anyways. It would just be an impact for construction control after we put the system in. So I can narrow that down as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So if the goal is to stay out of the 50 as much as possible, with the exception of the driveway crossing, then that's what I'll draw.
Yep, that's the goal.
Okay. And then as part of the whole proposal, I will talk to him about removing that crossing, because it's no longer needed if we put the crossing in where we've shown it. And again, I think after I meet with Matt on site, if we determine there's a better crossing point, I'll move the road, but I think this was the best spot because it was a degraded area with all of the knotweed that already exists in that section of the property.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Board
No,
on
yeah,
this.
yeah, we expected to continue tonight. I wanted to go, told Dawn that I wanted to just introduce the project. Dawn,
I appreciate
are you
that.
set with it?
Is there any
Is that
questions or
good email?
comments
Yeah, no.
from the
But
audience?
if you could email me it, that'd be
I'd be happy to
fantastic. I
email.
just don't wanna take your original.
No, that's
All
fine.
you have to do is present. So, how much time are you looking to go to?
I'd go to the next meeting.
Okay.
Matt's available, hopefully next week.
Yeah,
I
do you have
assume
his
he's away
contact,
this week.
do you have his
or-
contact
I do,
information? Good.
but is he just away this week? He's not attending tonight?
He's not here tonight because he's feeling ill.
Yeah,
So,
all right, so his
I don't know.
availability may be
Yeah.
He's
questionable.
coming back
I'm
from
not
China.
quite sure
Coming, yeah, right.
what his agenda
That's
is
fine.
looking at.
So if we end up, I'd like to continue to 2 weeks, and if for some
Sure.
reason I can't get things resolved with him in the interim, then I'll have to continue again.
Yeah, if you can just have a discussion with Matt about the limited project status as well, 'cause I think that needs to be addressed.
Right, if he's looking for it, we'll file it. If we figure a way around that because of, by eliminating the old crossing, that may be a way of resolving that.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Venus.
Yes, thank you, I appreciate your time.
Okay, Hayes, 16 Downey Street. This is a notice of intent for a single-family home. The Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020 at 7:30 at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Renz Hayes to raise a single-family house and construct a new single-family house with associated site work. The location is 16 Downey Street, assessors map R28, block 150, lot 0.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Renz and Joan,
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you guys.
Good to meet you.
they recently purchased a property at 16 Downey Street.
Okay.
This is an existing conditions topography. Downey Street to our left, to the right, lake is to our left, wetlands along the edge here, highlighted in green, 1,500-foot buffer. Deck is 3 feet off the wet, house is 10 feet off the wetlands, gravel driveway here,
A little horseshoe driveway, it's that property, right?
Yep. Walkway through here.
Buildings down below.
Yep, buildings way down
Way
the
down.
bottom. Yep. Series of
It's
retaining walls.
Pretty significant grade out there.
Yep. Yep, some lawn down at the bottom,
Okay.
mixed hardwoods in between, not really a lawn in here, but no shrubbery along the left. Boundary line is here. We do have a boundary line issue that we're working on. Our abutter to our right is house number 14. He's in the audience today. He's seen this plan. We're having discussions with him ongoing.
So that's unusual for that area. Have a boundary problem, right?
Yep,
That's a good joke.
it's been a struggle. The property's had-
Speaking from personal experience,
Yep.
as you recall,
It's everywhere.
How'd you resolve it?
That's everywhere, but anyhow.
with the help of the Markovs, actually, they took care of it.
What'd you do?
Dave can get you
I'll
up to
fill you in later.
Yeah,
Okay. So, our property lines are here in the pink, wetlands are here, lake is here, house is here. Wetland by, property line by one deed, property line by another. Okay, we're using this line here, that's the owner of number 14's deeded line. All our activity tonight, we're talking about, doesn't extend this side of that line. Everything is to the south side of that line.
Okay.
So what we're looking to do is we're going to, we have a foundation that's here underneath the existing house.
Right here's the foundation. That's a crawl space under that side.
We're looking to keep this portion, 13 by 29, as a shed. So there's no work there. The foundation would remain as is. We're just gonna build up from there, take it down and build it as a shed.
Okay.
The deck is gonna remain.
Okay,
Okay, we have a series of retaining walls. We have one here and one here.
okay,
Proposed house is highlighted in the blue. We have two driveways. We have a driveway here, front load here, and then a side load driveway here. We have, I think, 5 retaining walls. We're proposing a 4-foot high retaining wall here, one here, the deck is here, and the porch is here. We have a retaining wall here and here, and here. Try to break up the grade, catch up the grade. We have a proposed slotted drain that comes down in here. One of Matt's comments were that we had a pipe that extends to here, but our intention was to here. Rooftop, we have recharge units here and here, for rooftop only. And then the gutter was, the driveway was to come down to here. He was looking for some detail. We'll provide some detail on the recharge unit, as well as the slotted drain. We have a patio in the back with a series of steps coming down, lawn in between, retaining wall here. One of Matt's concerns was how we're gonna get access to here. It's gonna be right through here,
okay.
okay? We're,
The area where the existing structure is gonna be removed, the crawl space, what
It
will that
is.
be converted to?
exactly. So this is, there's a lot of stuff on that plan. This
Yeah.
is a
Appreciate that.
proposed condition plan only, no existing grades, so it's much easier to see. So, here's the shed, okay? Existing tree line takes this shape, right through here, okay, right through here. This is all lawn in through here, lawn in through here. The old house is up and through here.
That's
patio and
that's all
stairs.
existing lawn though, right?
Exactly, all
Yeah.
existing
Yeah,
lawn,
okay.
yeah. So, we're, gonna disturb 555 square feet here. In place of taking out the house, we're gonna create a meadow over here with wildflowers on this side at 700 square feet. Retaining wall, 2 and 3 feet, 4 feet high. Driveway here, proposed riprap apron here and here, 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 and here. We're gonna remove the sewer and water services, electrical services down to here. And we're gonna put a new sewer here and new water in here, connecting to the same utility as it hits the street.
Okay.
Like I said, recharge, and then a series of walls and staircase down.
Okay. Can you flip it over, please?
Yep.
Thank you. There's gonna be any drainage issues on this side. It's pretty narrow, right?
Yeah.
But you have to remember that all this is up gradient as well.
Right above it.
And there's been a couple properties in the vicinity. I don't think it's next door, but I think a few houses down where they were having problems with sheet flow coming down that hill. And, you know, they were getting washouts and water coming into the garage and stuff, so it was problematic. I don't know if you remember that one, Don, what house number that was.
They just did a section up here as well. They just put a berm for
Oh,
the street
okay.
going towards West Main Street.
Okay.
Same idea. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, that's why we were talking about putting riprap down the side of the driveway to make sure there's no washout.
Yep. And you can have a berm up here. Little,
Maybe a little bump, but not much. That road there is pretty well crowned.
okay.
Yeah,
And everything coming down's existing now too, so I don't see any real washout there. Did you?
You're just trying to prevent one for later
Yeah.
on, so that
Right.
we don't have an issue. We're not talking about it again.
Yeah, but then, on the other hand, you're pushing the water down the street, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's why we got the riprap on the sides and at the end of the driveway.
Okay.
Do you want us to propose something? Is that what you're?
No, I mean, as long as you feel comfortable with it,
With
Dave, the design.
Yeah.
I'm
I
just,
mean,
I just, the reason I mention is because, as I said, we've had a couple other houses, you know, on the same, on that side of Downey Street where they've had the problems, you know, because that area up on the hill there, if I'm thinking it's the right spot,
Yeah, I don't think there's that much.
it's
from-
undeveloped right now, but I think there's a lot up there that could be developed.
You could put a drain across the driveway and drain it to the riprap?
we are doing that on one. We could do it on the other. We could do that. Yep. Yep, we could
Just
take it down.
collect it if it comes off and.
Yep, we could take it
Whatever
down. Yeah, right now, we have a lot of roadway that's exposed with that gravel. That's kind of a wide curb cut. This is all parking now.
Right, yeah.
And there's a parking area here
Yeah,
for 14. This has all been used for number 16. So we're gonna kind of shorten that up a little bit. The driveway next door is all the way over to here. And this goes all the way over there. The property line is here.
About 15 feet.
So we're gonna shorten that up a little bit and then certainly shorten that up a little bit. So we're gonna have less
Okay.
exposure to the
You gonna get rid of
pavement.
that big boulder?
TBD.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a machine around big enough to get that one
That's what I
going.
was gonna say. That's what my thinking was. Okay. All right, so you saw Matt's comments.
Yeah,
Dave?
there's some house dressing that needs to be resolved.
I think we covered most of the major comments. Oh, the stump within the bank.
Yes, thank you. Yep, so previous, with another previous homeowner, they had a couple trees that fell into the water. This is a stump that's in here right now. The tree's been gone, but the stump still exists. So as part of that, they have previous permission to take down that tree. There's another tree here, and take out that stump as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna take that out and stabilize the area.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do that Ren's gonna do that.
Okay.
If we can get on the lot before the lake gets up high enough, yes, but if not, it's probably gonna be done in the fall to the winter.
Okay.
So you can probably mulch the area down or something, you know, just so you don't have any washing in the lake. you know.
Okay, questions or comments from the commission?
Are there any big trees coming down over here? I mean, I know you're replacing the meadow as your mitigation, right? But I was just curious what's,
Matt took some site photos in the low area, not up high. I was looking to see if he took any photos high for your driveway, but most of his site photos are down low.
Here you go, so you can see no lawn, but you see no
Right.
real vegetation.
Whose house next door? Is that,
Here's that dock, we haven't talked about the dock yet, the dock, we're gonna have to file for the dock. We'll show that on the revised plan, but we'll have to file for the dock.
yeah.
You can see the
Well,
back one,
that
Dawn.
was her house.
Oh, there
we
it
just
is,
saw.
right
You wanna go
Yeah,
back
this-
one?
yeah, right there, so,
Okay.
that area there is this area right over in here. Those are those trees there, those trees there are gonna remain.
Okay.
Okay, we're just gonna butt up to those with our vegetation for our grading for our recharge, and then recreate the meadow.
okay.
That's also our future access down to the shed.
I know the kids, Kyle and Christine.
Here's the stump.
Yeah.
If you go back up,
Sure.
you can see, nope, down, just down to one frame. You can see those two trees there that are leaning into the lake.
Yeah.
We're gonna take those out
I think
and
they
stabilize
have.
There's
that.
already
I think that was
permission
part
for
of the
that.
Right,
minor project
right, I just wanted to bring
exemption.
it to your
Yeah,
attention.
I'm sure
Those two are
I wrote a
available.
letter to that effect.
Yep, you did.
Yep.
Okay.
Nice photos.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments from the audience? Okay, so the 24th, continue it out until, okay. All right, thank you.
Very good,
See
thank
you in a
you.
couple weeks.
I can just get you to sign a continuation form. Absolutely. This is 16. Street. There we go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I know Ed was there. I was there for one. I was there. Well, my wife.
I don't see REC Hopkins.
You're out in the lobby.
So, yeah, so we brought my daughter.
Should be some.
Usually stay for the reception after. Did you go to MECC?
I didn't know.
Ed went. Ted, did you go to the MECC conference? I didn't see. I was only there for lunch.
I was there,
I know, my wife's sister saw you a couple times.
yeah, walked into her talk late.
Oh, I heard, and you walked right to the front of the room. She said you walked in and went right to the front or something like that? No?
You might have walked in the front, because that was the only place there was a door.
No, but that's the
Evening.
It was one of those, something about the front. And you coming in late. And leaving early.
No?
No. I made that part up.
Just like other guy that looks like you.
Yeah,
I made
so
it.
many.
No.
Hey, how's
How
it
are
going?
you?
Good, thanks.
I'll take it. I need to give those back to you.
Did you go to the reception? Did you go to the reception at the end? The dude who won the kayak, just won like every grand prize the last 10 years. Okay. Or most of them anyway.
We open? We're open. Oh, all right. You're waiting for me. All right. Oh, there you go.
We missed the open.
Yeah, it's continued.
So Scott Goddard, Goddard Consulting, John Cusich, Former Engineering, Kathy Sherry, REC Hopkinton. here representing the amendment request, thank you, for the order of conditions that's been issued for the subdivision. This commission issued an order of conditions for the road and utility infrastructure for this project. As you know, the work is underway on the site. A lot of us have been to the site and seen it. We had some violation issues we've worked through, and the site's in good control right now. We think everything there has been buttoned up. We're doing regular inspections, so all things
Great.
considered, I think we're in good shape on the site, and it continues to be that way. Since the original approval, the board knows that we had subsequent wetland-related approvals to get from two other significant agencies. One is the DEP, and the other is the Army Corps of Engineers. That's due to the size of the wetland impacts. So we had to file for a water quality certificate with the Department of Environmental Protection. That's reviewed by their Wetlands Division, and then we also had to file an Army Corps of Engineers review under the 404 program of the Clean Waters Act. We did do that, and both of those agencies largely agreed with and liked the. Is this something new, or is this the old one?
The old one,
Okay.
I said I'd give you a hard copy of the meeting.
They largely agreed with the premise of the project and the impacts and the design and the mitigation as proposed. Each of those agencies had a few nuances to their review that they wanted incorporated. So it was our intent to sort of bring it all together, make sure there's one operating set of plans and supporting documents that deal specifically with the wetland impacts and the mitigation. So all the review with DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers only deals with the wetland impacts itself. So it's the two crossings. It's the Wayland crossing when you come in here, and it's the emergency crossing here. I mean, peripherally, the paths as they go through the site and through some of the wetlands, but they really have no comments about that. More specifically, it's about the crossing. They don't review buffer zones and layouts and things like that. It's just the impacts themselves. So the package was somewhat lengthy, but I will give you kind of the substance of it. First off, when you look at, this is the Wayland crossing. Okay, so for orientation purposes, this is the one that you approved, and this is the revised one that the DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers reviewed. Again, substantially the same, but I'll show you the difference. Here's Wayland Road, here's Wayland Road, here's the access crossing, here's the access crossing. The project that we got approval on, again, this version of the plan, we show the limit of work line where this orange line is right here, okay? DEP rightly pointed out, I'll call it an oversight on our part with the original review of this, is that since we're taking the stream channel that routes through this pipe and we're rerouting it through this wetland over here and then through the large box culvert, that natural pipe channel is actually over here where it re-enters the wetland. So we need to make sure that the new stream channel that's going to be going through here is going to be able to re-enter the stream channel. So if our limit of work line is here, we lack the ability to recontour the ground to create a stream swale with banks going from here to there. So
That was a good catch. on that
DEP,
one.
they have no problem with it. They just wanted to make sure we accounted for it in our square footages of impacts. So the revised plan shows a limit of work here. It's technically more wetland alteration shown in this area, but it's necessary to properly tie in the stream to the old stream bed. So that's an additional 600 and change square feet of wetland alteration to do that. So that's approved by DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. That's one. Secondly is the main crossing. I'll show you the before and after. So
Plan number is that one you just threw out? I can't see it on the front.
this one right here,
Yeah,
39.
thank you.
Yep. So let's start with this one. This is the approved crossing. We're calling it the emergency access crossing or crossing 2, the larger crossing. This is just a zoomed in version of this, so we can just focus on the zoomed in version. Okay, it's a 20 scale plan. So this is what the commission approved. The orange was the approved limit of work line, and this is the approved road layout. We have an abutment right here, an abutment right there, abutment right there, and an abutment right there. So if you remember, we have sort of this main stream channel. It's on a slope. There's a lot of rocks in and throughout it, It's not exactly water from end to end. There are portions of it that have substantial amounts of non-water, and we did design this abutment here to be in one of those non-water rock areas, so that it wasn't coming down in the water threads of the stream, and it's a kind of a discontiguous stream channel. And then there's a secondary stream channel that runs over on this side. We have these two spans here, which certainly clears this. And this one here, we looked at the kind of cumulative of the two stretches together to meeting the stream crossing standards. DEP said they would really prefer it if we didn't have this touchdown abutment in the stream channel. So they wanted us to look at spanning this whole thread, this meandering kind of braided stream. So we basically did that. I mean, they weren't going to let go of that very gracefully or easily, so we gave them what they were asking for. We worked with the bridge design company to check on the lengths of equipment that we can get in there on the flatbed, so we're gonna be able to physically build this, and so Bowler worked heavily with not only Mike McCura, but also the bridge contractors and the suppliers to make sure that we had the right materials that this could be constructed. It was redesigned to put, that abutment basically is in the same place. This one that was here is eliminated, and then the second abutment there, this one also stays in the same place. We also then tightened the limit of work in here. There was a previously approved limit of work that was a bit more generous for work, and that was out in here and out in here. Now, you know that if you've been to the site, that limit of work has already been cleared of trees, but no grading work has been done. So at the end of the day, there's been some temporary removal of some trees and all in here, but that's all going to be able now to just revegetate. There'll be no grading, no earthwork, no need to restore, whatever. So we'll deal with that as part of the construction. So
So minimizing that limit of work, was that a DEP request, or that was just a function of the new bridge design?
both and, they wanted to make sure that we were being as tight as possible
Okay.
on this. And this doesn't leave a lot of room on the side. I guess the fact that the trees are gone will make the work a little bit easier immediately adjacent to it with the branches and all. But nevertheless, we do believe this can be constructed now, and there'll be some wetland loss of vegetation, directly underneath that, but that's all accounted for in our replication area. The Army Corps of Engineers asked for also some detailed cross-sections of the impacts. They wanted cross-sections of the replication areas, so they wanted a little bit more detail too on the mitigation area that's happening over near the Wayland section that's on the back side of this. So nothing that's radically different than what we've done before, but they just wanted a few more cross-sectional details and specs on that. So we've updated the approved stream mitigation, wetland mitigation plan this board approved, but the things that we've added to it have only been to further advance the interests of the Wetland Protection Act regulations, consistent with what you would all be looking for. There's nothing in here that I would see any contradiction whatsoever with what this board was looking for. Both of these two modifications, I think, just are a bit more of I'll call it a slightly more thorough catching of a few items that the other agencies were looking for. So that's really the essence of this application. Matt did submit a letter asking for some merging of various documents. There was some bookkeeping items about how we're counting square footages. I think there was one or two spots where we had some temporary impacts and permanent impacts. The numbers were kind of overlapping. We cleaned all of that up, so the DEP wanted to make sure in the 401 the numbers were clear. Matt was asking for some documents to be updated even yet further. I sort of get a response letter that pushed back on that a little bit, only because I would rather the commission reference the approved documents of the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEP, so that we have one complete set that we're all referencing. If there was any nuances the commission saw fit to be slightly different, it can be conditioned, or we can deal with during construction, because at that point the modifications would be very minor and be more appropriate for field calls. Things like Matt was asking about, the pebble count in the stream and how we're going to finalize the substrate of the stream bed as we restore it. We have on-site material that we plan to restore that with. Matt and I will fine-tune the pebbles replacements, at the time of construction. I don't see that being a problem whatsoever.
I'm fine with that.
There's also a beta review that's out and about.
Yeah,
that's
so
still
that
going
they're
back.
still, so just going back to that, Scott,
Yep.
I guess Matt was saying that there was, in his comments, there was some conflicting descriptions between the reports. So just as long as those are cleaned up, I'm okay with having a separate report.
Right.
I think,
Sure.
in regards to, so it says prepare and submit a single revised document that describes the wetland replication, stream restoration details and specs. I think in regards to that, I'm thinking Matt's thinking, and I would agree, if there's one set of documents that he's supposed to inspect against and look at, if you have things in multiple places and you're picking up one plan and not two plans, or however many copies we need to get all the notes that we're supposed to be looking at, I think that's kind of problematic, and I'm afraid something would fall through the cracks.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And so I guess there's competing interests in that. Do we do it that way and make a new one that integrates Matt's final comments, DEP's comments, and Army Corps comments all together? They've already issued their permits citing specific documents, so we risk having conflicts at that point too, where then that would be asking potentially that, I don't think the DEP and the Army Corps are gonna care, honestly, because
No.
this board is the boots on the ground for this, right?
Right.
When this goes to construction, it's really, this is the eyes and ears of that review process. So they're somewhat removed from it, so it's more important to us to satisfy this board than it is those other boards, because I think their review is gonna be fine regardless. So we can do that. I just wanna make sure that we're not creating other problems with those agencies as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not so worried about them. I'm more worried about following through with the project and having something that we can look at and say, this is what everybody agreed on,
yeah.
and the contractor understands, and if we
Because
were
I
to go out
could
there and
basically
look-
make it and say that this is the combination of the Army Corps approval, the DEP approval, and the order of conditions, and this is that document.
Right.
I could do it like that and just make it one document that deals with all of the.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because, and I agree with Melissa, we don't want another situation happening like what happened, out here, yeah. So the contractor goes out there, you guys aren't out on site, he's looking at one document, doesn't have the full scope, of what needs to be done. And I think just potentially, if it's a clean document that has everything, compiled in it, it's gonna behoove, you guys, because you still have that $15,000 abeyance out there, right?
And then we can just
And-
cite that it satisfies the Army Corps, approved document and the
Yeah.
DEP's approved document. I think we can accomplish that.
Yeah,
also.
because even these, it seems minor that, if there's a note that says upon removal of soil, put back the soil and whatnot. I mean, we know it's supposed to be pebble count and whatever that's in another report, but if it says that on a plan somewhere that somebody has, somebody's gonna follow that and not realize.
Read.
Yeah,
I can accomplish that, Melissa. I
Okay.
think I can do that.
okay.
Okay. So I think the tree and shrub planting plan, that can be done, in the field with Matt. I don't think we need to develop that, prior. Parallel requirement of the monitoring, I think that makes sense, that can just be a special condition. And then I think the big outstanding item is, Beta provided the comments, to the, structural engineers. And they haven't received, or I haven't seen any comments back.
No.
Based on Beta's review.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the beta comment was very technical relative to
Yeah.
what's the guide rail rating, the
Right.
anchoring rating, the so forth and so on and so forth. The structural engineers are working through those comments to address them. My hope is to essentially submit it, get a clean letter from Beta. I don't think it's gonna be anything that you guys care about. I'm not trying to minimize it. What I mean by that is the
No, I agree.
structure is where the
Yeah.
structure is, and it's gonna be stuff within it that they're talking about. We'll obviously provide that information, but we're just working, the structural engineers are working through that now to submit it back to Beta, so.
Yeah, I think there
hopefully
was-
we come with a clean letter back to you.
Yeah, I think there was one comment that really related to us, and that was on the, 25, the 15, 25, and 50-year scouring, flooding and the associated scouring. Was the first or second comment they had. I think everything else is, as you say, mostly structural.
Yeah, I don't remember that one specific. I remember there was one where they wanted more, they wanted us to essentially provide a little bit more room under the structure, which we've accommodated that. I'll go back and look at it, but regardless, your point's taken. I think everything's gonna be kind of inside it, but
Yeah.
anything outside we'll certainly review with you when we come back with a hopefully clean comment letter.
Okay. All right, so I think we're good. I'm satisfied, we just need that blessing from Beta, and then I'll open it up to the commission for any other questions or comments.
None.
Questions or comments from the audience?
So you're just gonna leave the updated plan to Matt's review,
Yeah.
compiled?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
I'll get it to you and him prior to the next.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll just continue out till the 24th, and hopefully we'll have Beta's reviewed by then.
Yeah.
Come a little earlier. I've already booked out to 9:45. Obviously, we've got Petrosi's, all those, taking up 10 minutes at a whack.
Petruzzi was going to withdraw a couple of them, though, wasn't he?
Hasn't yet.
Okay, well, if he doesn't withdraw them at the next meeting, we're not gonna have a long meeting with him.
Right.
It's been dragging on too long,
Right.
so.
So
we'll-
just tag
yeah,
it on.
Yeah, we'll tag it on. I think it should be fairly quick, so, as long as Beta doesn't,
Yeah.
raise any issues, yeah. Okay, great.
Thank
You
you.
just
Thank
gotta
you all.
sign this.
Appreciate it.
Let me just throw in the dates when I go down.
Have a good night.
You too, thank you. Tell, Mr. Merv I said hello. I haven't talked to him in a while.
I will do that. He's still around and kicking.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, Hopkinton DPW, Lake Maspinock, this is a continuation of a notice of intent for the aquatic management plan. And I'll pass the chairmanship over to the chairpersonship to Ms. Ricos. Good evening.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, good evening.
welcome back.
Thank you very much.
All right. So this is a continuation of our last meeting. I guess to start, unless you have a particular agenda for tonight, I can just go over, try and summarize where we were at
Sure,
the
be
last
happy to
meeting.
summarize and any questions that may have come up since that time.
All right, I'll just go through my notes, as far as where we kind of left off. And you can add or correct after I go through that. So at our last meeting, you presented a notice of intent application for herbicide application, to the lake based on the recommendations of the long-term lake management plan to improve water quality, habitat, and recreation in Lake Maspinock. The issues of the weeds have been at hand for many years and have been held at bay with the drawdowns that we've had seasonally, but due to the climate and, the shallow well issues, this is no longer a reliable and effective, sole method of weed control, and it's impacting, uses of the lake. We talked about that herbicides were presented back in 2015, and approved by the commission, but they were voted down, at town meeting in favor of creation of the Lake Maspinock, management plan to look for alternative, weed management and an overall plan for the lake. And, so that plan was created, and resulting from the plan, it's reduced the herbicide application from what was proposed in the 2015 plan. It also proposes recommendation alternatives for other methods that were gone through in the plan, and notes that the water quality is pretty good in the lake. Also, through reading through it, I read that herbicides alone are a short-term solution, and other BMPs and controls are also needed to be implemented for long-term lake management, based on my reading of the report, my understanding. There were also, at our last meeting, as well as some letters submitted since then to the board to relay resident concerns. Concerns were raised regarding private well impacts from herbicides, wildlife impacts, personal exposure to herbicides in the water. And also, it was just brought up that just because EPA approves a herbicide application, it doesn't necessarily mean there's no effects from it. We also talked about if no herbicides are applied, there's the risk of recreation and property value being diminished, lake eutrophication, and there's also wildlife water quality impacts due to the weeds in the lake. So that was kind of my notes, and from what I looked at reading the reports, since the last is harmful to the lake and residents. So definitely we need to work on coming to a resolution here. And I also believe that the current condition of the lake is not due to no action, it's due to development and what we do to the lake in general. So does anybody else have anything else? Do you want to add to that as far as where we're at?
So I
as far
just
as what
wanted
was
to
presented?
thank you for the continued public hearing, and thank you for your comments about the plan that was developed. The advisory group has worked very hard over the past 5 years to develop a comprehensive plan with the expertise of Mr. Mitchell. We do have some comments that were received. I don't know if that's important to read them into the record, or if the Conservation Commission already has all those. And I think that last time we were interrupted in the midst of public comment. But we're here tonight to answer any questions or provide any additional information.
We typically read the applicant letters, or I think they're
No, they've been entered into the record.
entered into the record.
I've reviewed them. Assume the commission's had a chance to look at them. Don sent them out to all of us.
Did everyone get a chance to review the letters that were submitted from the public? You have not. One of the things that was brought up in one of the letters that might be worth touching on is that the town meeting vote back in 2015 was brought up, and that was provided to the record as far as what exactly was voted on, was copied into the record from the town clerk. And upon reading that, it, to me, and this is my opinion, it definitely reads, I guess
This the
Don's
one
bringing up there,
you're
yep, that's the one
referencing? Yep.
I'm referring to. If you scroll down, it's
Sure.
towards the bottom. Keep going,
Yep. Just trying to grab it. You want like the last
up
page?
a little
Yep.
bit. So it's,
right there.
yeah, it's right about there.
Okay.
So,
the chair, I did bring hard copies of that document.
sure. I can pass them out.
This is the
So it's a little bit confusing, but it seems that it was initially, the motion was initially made to, as a need for a comprehensive plan to remove weeds without herbicides and create a citizens input committee to recreate this plan. The motion was modified. Not to specify without herbicides, but to create a comprehensive plan to address, weed management, including the citizens committee, is the way it reads to me. However, I don't know that individual interpretation of that from people voting, I would interpret that as a vote against herbicides, and I hesitate to say that because that's speculation, and that's my reading into it, and that is not how it was actually stated for the vote. I think the way it was passed shows some support for not applying herbicides in favor of alternative methods of weed control by the town, by members of the town. But I also believe that what we're looking at here tonight in front of the commission is not a decision on how the vote went at town meeting. I mean, I think we can think about that when we're looking at it and what people think of herbicides, but as far as whether or not this would need to go back to town meeting, or people would need to vote on that, I think that's a Board of Selectmen issue.
Madam Chair, I would just say that I think the charge of the Citizens Input Group was always to come up with an integrated plan. And if you look anywhere in terms of integrated plant and algae management plans, they look at a variety. And as I think I mentioned before, looking at the 44 different things, there's a combinations of things. I think it was to look, my impression was that people did not, well, just say we looked at all the possibilities. That included herbicide, we looked at all the other possibilities as well.
Right, everything that I read in the file, and beyond, the case studies that were in the Mass DEP, the Mass DEP documents all refer to herbicide is one tool in the toolbox that cannot be used by itself. The use of herbicides is to maybe control a large weed growth to get it in control, so that you can then implement other best management practices for long-term maintenance. But herbicide is not a long-term maintenance solution in itself, so it should be coupled
Well, it's like
with
drawdown.
other
Drawdown
alternatives.
is good, but it's not necessarily the only thing that you
Correct.
really want to have is controlling the weeds.
Correct.
So use a combination.
Right.
So through the chair, to the point of interpretation of the motion and the article that was passed, I think it's important the town council weigh in to determine whether or not that prohibited herbicides ever being used in the lake, and if that was only for that appropriation, or if that continued on through current appropriations in the DPW budget. So we'll ask town council to weigh in on that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes.
So through the chair, I just, You know, I've talked to people on both sides of this issue over the past few weeks. And, you know, I think one of the misconceptions is that, you know, by voting on the use of herbicides through the Conservation Commission, that it would be an ongoing thing, you know, that we'd be looking at using the herbicides on a continuous basis going forward. And that's not the case. You know, obviously the extended drawdown is what we, is the preferred method, because it has the minimal impact to the lake. However, the well issue precluded us from doing that this year. But I just wanted to clarify that, you know, in this particular situation for this year, we, you know, we did do the drawdown. It wasn't the extended drawdown, but we had very mild conditions. So the advisory group made the recommendation that herbicides would potentially be used this spring, but that it was dependent on an inspection that would be conducted in the spring by the committee. They'd go out, take a look at the conditions, and if the conditions look to be similar to what they were last year, then the decision would be made to do spot treatments in certain areas where, you know, we saw the denser growth. So I just wanted to clear that misconception up. It's not a continuous thing. This is an approval to do it every year or multiple times a year. This was just an approval for, you know, 1 or 2 applications this upcoming year, potentially.
I guess I have a question kind of stemming from that comment. So, you know, we're all in agreement that if herbicide, you know, if in regards to this notice of intent, long-term plan talks about, you know, the other methods, you know, what do we do if we're not using herbicides, and what are the other BMPs that we're using in conjunction with these, and they're identified in the long-term plan, but I don't really see an actual, like, plan. Will they be, like, what else will be implemented besides herbicides? I would feel a bit uncomfortable, or I don't know that I would be able to entertain the NOI without knowing that there's other things where there's money allotted that we are going to do in addition to the herbicides or to supplement those for the long-term plan. I see it in the long-term plan document that was created, but I don't see it in the notice of intent that's in front of us, which is the only thing that we really have set in stone, you know, that will be carried forward, rather than a plan just sitting on a shelf.
So through the chair, the issue of the extended drawdown was not able to be accomplished this year to the 8-foot level, but we have not exhausted all of our options as when it comes to the extended drawdown. So the town is still pursuing that, but that's not something that we can rely on, even if we were to able to accomplish that. This year we had 70-degree temperatures during that time, so it wouldn't have been effective. So we need to have an approach that combines multiple options, and I think it all depends on where we are within the lake and where the weeds are prominent. This past year, they were prominent in what we show as zone 1 and 1A. So it really depends. The plan lays out where the different weeds may appear and what the different approaches are for each of those. So again, we would look to use herbicides as part of a combination of approaches. And again, we're still pursuing that extended drawdown because that was the most effective and the least impactful to the environment, to abutters, and it was essentially zero cost.
Does anyone on the board have any questions before I do want to get some more comments from the
I
public?
have comments. I think this is a Band-Aid approach, and My concern is that we turn around and we have to do it again, and we have to do it again, and we're not looking at the effects that we humans and our use of the lake have on the lake. The elephant in the room are the boats. Boat propellers cut up weeds. Some weeds reseed just from the bits that are trimmed off. Boats bring in weeds from other places. And the stuff we put on the lawns all around the lake goes into the lake and affects the water quality. I think to sit here and take a rifle shot at herbicides and not look at these other aspects of the problem is not appropriate.
I think we asked a question 2 weeks ago, and I don't know if I heard an answer. Did you look at other herbicides besides diclot and the other one you're using?
Indithol. We did, we identified those. Again, it looks on which, they try to match the pesticides to the plants they're trying to go. So there is ones in terms of what they're listed for, in terms of the fan wort, in terms of the variable milfoil, in terms of the largely potamogeton. So you're looking for ones that are specific to those. Some pesticides do not have any particular impact on this. These are a little bit more wide systematic herbicides, wide contact herbicides, so they have a general effect. They're essentially going to be effective for most of the weeds that are there. It'd be nice to fine tune it a little bit more, but these are the tools that are there.
So I couldn't find the answer to the question I'm about to ask, but maybe you can tell me. The European Union says no to diclot, and I know it's not for lake weed management, it's more
Right.
agricultural. What do they use instead? And why can't we look into that?
I don't know that much, to tell you the truth, about what aquatic pesticides are used. The one that they gave the example for was an agricultural. It was mostly because of an agricultural use in potato crops. Because I guess to make sure that you get good big potatoes, you kill the foliage before you harvest them. That's my impression, is it, so that was the one that they used as their, they probably don't manage their lakes quite like we do, or their lakes may not be, I could speculate. I could speculate, but I don't know enough about it.
I couldn't find an answer either.
Right. It still obviously is legal in the entire United States, so.
Through the chair, I know we had talked about other alternatives last time as far as manual removal of the weeds, and I know one of the drawbacks was they'll have to sit in a pile somewhere and rot for 2 weeks. I don't know why that's such a bad thing, if it's an alternative to putting herbicides in the lake. I mean, so they rot on the shore for a couple of weeks.
Well, through the chair, we were talking about mechanical harvesting. That's different than actual hand pulling.
Well, either,
There are places that has been done, but you'd have to find some place. They would become, I'd say at the very least, they'd become a bit of a nuisance unless there was some place they could be sequestered away from public activity, because they do rot,
but we
they
wouldn't be
smell,
able
and
to
do
leave-
flies. I know for experience.
Right, but we wouldn't be able to use the lake for 2 weeks if we put herbicides in them, so same thing, 2 weeks of
I
the
don't
weeds
believe-
rotting versus not using the lake for 2 weeks.
Through the chair, I don't believe the 2 weeks is a correct value.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So
I
again, I
must have
think that we heard a lot of different discussion from public comments suggesting restrictions and periods of times that are probably not accurate in this case, in terms of the restrictions on lakes following an herbicide treatment that's away from any kind of a public well and such. So it's not 2 weeks. In many cases, it's 1 to 2 days. I think 3 days might be a maximum.
I think that regardless of what the minimum is recommended by EPA, I think the perception of people that when you put an herbicide in the lake and they're notified, they're gonna make their own choice as to how long they're gonna feel comfortable with using the lake.
It's
If at all, it's, a personal preference. Obviously, there's the guidelines by EPA, but I think that, just because in our mind we say it's okay after 1 day, I think the actual impact to people might be greater than that based on their own personal feelings of what they're comfortable with.
From my
and use.
interpretation, psychologically, there might
Right.
be different. The guidelines are not just simply suggestions, they've been based on lots and lots of tests. So it's, but again, in terms of the posting that would be required by whoever would be, end up doing this, it would have to let people know in terms of how long they couldn't use a lake.
And did, when I was looking at the report, I didn't see anything in, did you look at, I didn't see it in the report, rototilling or reverse layering to pull roots out when the water's down anyway? Was that looked at?
I've done what's called hydro raking. I'm familiar with that. That tends to be essentially like a little backhoe on pontoons. And that's particularly good when you have things which are deep-rooted woody, so it's very good for taking water lilies out, for example, which do not come out easily and such. It's just not effective in terms of how much air you can treat with that. And it's kind of messy, to tell you the truth. It takes a lot of sediment out, too. So the kinds of stuff we're looking at, like, and rototilling, I don't believe has been done. I mean, that's talk about somehow churning up the bottom to kind of do this. We have pretty, I guess, I'm not sure if that's what you meant by rototilling.
Yeah, there's reverse.
Is this in the GEIR that you?
Yeah, there was reference to reverse layering and rototilling.
Okay.
And I know it said that it has not been used very frequently. There's not really many case studies on it, so, you know, I understand that being a concern, but.
Okay. I could speak because I actually helped put the GEI together in 2004, and that was a particular method that one particular person worked toward the Cape. It has not been successful. The idea of pulling sand out, and putting on top of the organic, it has not been successful. The sand just migrates through in the organic. So that was 2004 knowledge. That's what the experience has shown us.
Jim, do you have anything before I open it?
No, I'm just looking into this. No, I'm all set.
If I could ask one more question to the chair. Are there certain fish we could stock the lake with that would
This isn't.
eat the weeds?
Oh.
Grass carp, maybe?
Grass harp are not legal in Massachusetts.
Okay.
They've been tried elsewhere. They call them triploid carp. They basically are supposed to be 99.9% sterile.
Yes.
That problem is the 1%, and the fact is they will start eating anything and not necessarily the weeds you want.
Or the fish you want to keep
Or
there.
the fish you want. Well, not the fish, but.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just, you know, I know too much to make it pithy, but they've been tried in small ponds. They're effective in small farm ponds. And tried like fish farms in the south, that's where they kind of end up doing a lot. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'd like to open it up to the public for comment. I'll take the first hand I saw up, the man in the back row there. If you could say your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name's Jamie Gonzalez. I'm at 92 Downey Street. I'm the vice chair for the CIG. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's actually come tonight, because I think this is probably the most people we've actually had besides a public hearing, actually show up to one of our meetings about weeds in the lake. And I applaud everybody for their passion and efforts involved with dealing with the lake, because it is a jewel for Hopkins, and I think it's great that everybody's here for that. But I want to kind of go through a couple things that I heard. The amount of time that's been looked at, we've gone through, it's been 5 years, we've put in this plan together. We've met diligently 50-plus times, I believe, over the.
32 meetings, 3 select board presentations, 5 forums, hearings, and surveys, and 1 town meeting presentation.
Thank you, Sylvia. And there's been a lot of effort put into place with this. We've enlisted some, professional to go over all of our suggestions, and I actually brought up the carb suggestion in one of my first meetings. Sorry. So this is all great, and we all went into it saying, what is the successful. Unfortunately, that's not on the table right at this point, but we're still working on it. But right now, we have no other options available to us right now. The hand pulling, the harvesting, just because of the morphology of the lake and the impacts of having the weeds and pulling the weeds from the lake, having them dry out, letting them de-water, the amount of, impact that's gonna cause is just excessive, as well as the cost. You have to look at the cost as well. I hate to say it, but that's part of the equation. So I think it's real important that you look at the whole aspect of the time and effort that we put in. We looked at all of these things, and we really did. And this is not something of a decision that we made, we came to lightly. I just really want you to understand, this is something that we worked on real hard to get to this point. And I think it's the best decision we have right now. And I agree. We're hoping that this is a one-time thing that we have to do. But right now, that's the only options we have on the table right now that we can do. So I just appreciate your time and effort and listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd like to address a couple of issues. One is the Cornell.
Name for the,
My name's
for the
Don
record?
Kaiser, Oakhurst Road.
Thank you.
From the Canal paper, they say that EPA requires, and this is 1993, and we know where the EPA is going these days, but they required at least 14 days no swim. And so unless David's got some new information on the EPA, when
With
they
regard to
changed
not
that.
dicot?
What? Dicot.
Pardon me.
Yes. I have another question for David and John. They both indicated that this winter is an example of winter which drawdown wouldn't have worked. My ground's been frozen all winter. The bottom of the lake that's been exposed has been frozen all winter. I don't know how deep. Did they measure how deep? How deep does it have to freeze in order for it to kill weeds? And I know we all agree that the drawdown gave us the best year ever after we did that 8-foot drawdown. I've been here 36 years. I'm willing to swim in weeds for another year and hope that we can resolve this drawdown and get back to it, because it means no poisons. We're not going to be pissed off at each other, and we're not going to start accumulating poisons in the lake. And that's where I stand. I probably have more to say, but I'll stop for that.
Okay.
If I can get an answer on those questions.
Sure.
So,
Would you
through
like
the
to
chair,
speak to that?
just, we had, the last drawdown that we did, I think was 4 years ago. And we had to request an extension of the duration of that. According to the operation and maintenance plan for the dam, you have to start to bring the level of the lake back up to the 5-foot level by January 15th. And we had requested an extension that time because we didn't have freezing temperatures. I think it's probably not dependent as much on the frost, but on the ambient temperatures. We had some snow cover, and then we had more mild temperatures. So we requested the extension, and the temperatures dropped, which was very good. This year, again, we've had such a mild winter. Within that period up to January 15th, we had 70-degree weather. So I don't believe that it would have been effective this year, looking at the past history and what we had to do to extend the duration.
Through the chair, I understand he got that from Cornell, which is a fine institution. I graduated from there. The 1993 is, I'm not sure what it is, but this is something, and I think I put in the packet that was sent in with the notice of intent. It's from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Again, another agricultural extension in terms of their guidance on how to do this. And this is for dicot. Post-treatment water use restrictions. This is Wisconsin, which is fairly advanced in terms of lake management. There are no restrictions or swimming or eating fish from water bodies treated with dicot. Treated water should not be used for drinking water for 1 to 3 days, depending on the concentration used in the treatment. Do not use treated water for pet or livestock drinking water for 1 day following treatment. The irrigation restriction on food crops is 5 days, and for ornamental plants or lawn turf, it varies from 1 to 3 days, depending on the concentration used. So I don't read from that there's a 14-day ban on swimming. In fact, I see from what they're saying that there is little or no restriction. And again, I think it's looking at the sources, and I can find more sources if that would be satisfy the commission.
Yes, sir.
Ron Seamus, 36 Lakeshore Drive. Couple questions. One is, I believe Mr. Westerling pointed out that one of the town officials provided their agreement conditionally. And the condition was that the European Union didn't disqualify the use of dicot. Is that correct?
If you'll bear with me one moment while I pull up that email, it was from the town planner. I would recommend the use of pesticides, and I truly believe that he meant herbicides. I would recommend the use of herbicides that are also approved by California and the European Union, rather than just the EPA and DEP. I believe that's what.
As Ted pointed out, they are not allowed in the European Union. Correct.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that we had provided information that showed that that was more from an aerial spraying. If you have that, Dave.
Yeah.
Please.
I don't know if this is, in terms of the response, just in terms of the background information for the European ban, it was based on potential for aerial drifts and residues in soils. And again, I don't think that it's a different kind of application. And again, depending, if you're looking in terms of risk, it's based on exposures and concentrations in the mode of weather applications. With regard to California, California does allow dicot throughout.
Thank you, Dave. Just talking about the European Union. We also know that Japan is banned its use, as well as parts of Scandinavia, I guess is part of the European Union. The other point, and I'll get off the stage here, but when you're deciding between 2 days or 14 days, I'm going to go back to what I said 5 years ago. We're in close proximity to the beach where our children swim, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to try to skimp on the amount of time for safety, or are we going to lean towards safety, right, of our children, right? And with that, so I recommend Cornell and the other institutions of higher learning are recommending 14 days. Why don't we just, for safety's sakes, go with 14 days, assuming that you guys go with that route. With that, what are we going to do with regard to barriers? Like, are we going to put a Jersey barrier in front of the boat launch? What are we going to do to prevent children who come off the bus and run down by the water right after school? Prevent them from going in the water, or worse, getting sprayed with the stuff if the boat is out there at 2 o'clock or whatever time the bus comes. Right? And then, how are we going to patrol that, right? So how are we going to keep people from going out and fishing and all of those kinds of things?
Through the chair, if I could just reread the email from Jay Gulfey, who's the director of the Parks and Recreation Commission. Per our conversation earlier, the Parks and Recreation Department is comfortable with the recommendation of the Weed Management and Control Advisory Group. And Dave, I don't know if you have any experience with how they prevent or how they notify people that there are herbicides in the lake and how they prevent people from entering.
There's usually posting of the public spaces, obviously the public beach, boat launches, usually probably the traffic corners where people are making turns, for example, onto the lake drives. The town usually dictates in the order of conditions, can add additional ones as well. But basically, it's the idea of people who would be casual, that would both be residents and also casuals, use of the lake would be notified, and it would be by prominent signage. It's just posting is part of the requirements the applicator has to do, and a certain amount of days ahead of time, too.
Right.
Just through the chair, Melissa, real quick, to add to that, I think the LMPA Association has a fairly comprehensive list of the folks that live on the lake, so they could provide notice as well through their email notification.
I think, if this were to be approved, the commission should consider a condition of approval, maybe of a plan, a plan presented on what the education is going to be for the application, taking into account different methods and working with the Lake Bassmanock committee on what appropriate measures would be, and with Parks and Rec and other people to really nail down what that plan.
Through the chair, this is again, and I'm not the applicant or the one who's going to actually be selected if the one in fact is approved. But you can certainly, you can ask what their plan is, and then it goes, or you can dictate what they'll have to do.
Right, I guess that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't feel comfortable unless there was a condition saying that, it needed to be reviewed and approved. We would never put that on the applicator to be solely responsible for notifying
It's
people
actually
of
his
this.
responsibility, but that would
It
be
is, but
fine.
I still wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I would want some oversight from people who are.
Through the chair,
Yep.
what I would suggest to go to other conservation commissions that have them, and then take a look at their order of conditions, and you can, if you will, pick the ones you like best.
Right.
So.
Through the chair, point of order. The two emails you mentioned, I think they were discussed at the last meeting, they're not part of the record. So we were hoping to get those submitted as part of the record. You mentioned
Jay Golfi
Parks and Rec
and John Gelsich.
and the town planner, they're not on record.
Okay, I'll forward those to you. I apologize.
Okay. On that. Go ahead.
Hi, Kristen Parent, Downey Street. I want to address a couple of issues. In Harold, you had mentioned your concern about your statement that preventing the stuff that causes the that needs to build up in the lake to be prevented in the first place. And the other one is about what did they do in Europe. So I know about in Switzerland, decades ago, they had issues too with lakes that were basically dead, and people were told not to eat the fish out of the lakes, and these lakes are now pristine. And two of the things they did, one is prevent agricultural runoff, road runoff from entering the lakes, which addresses that. And the other thing is what they did instead of dike block or herbicides in many cases, they did aeration or oxygenation of the lake, which we had also kind of briefly looked at 5 years ago, where you pump air into the lake and they've done it in New England in a couple of ponds very successfully, that can reduce that muck buildup at the bottom and can reduce the weed growth. So that is also a fairly no-cost measure that can be taken, and it's non-toxic, and it can have long-term effect on preventing weed growth and reducing the muck at the bottom of the lake. So there are other options out there besides dike. And I agree fully, just because we might face another year with a lot of weeds, we just move ahead and put the dike water in. It's just really a big concern to me, to putting toxins into our lake. We all know Roundup was approved, and other chemicals were approved, and now it's coming back with people really having gotten cancer from all those herbicides and pesticides that were applied and were approved by the EPA and were told to be safe, that are not, or will never be. Toxins into nature just is, I think, a horrible thing to do in this day and age where we know what the consequences are of those chemicals.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I just responded to the comments you brought up about aeration and watershed controls are very important into reducing, I should say, particularly watershed controls in terms of nutrients. But such things as aeration and such, you're also looking, don't forget, you're confused, I should say, there's two different things. There's water quality, which particularly looks at the amount of, say, algal growth and phytoplankton that grows as a result of nutrients. It makes the water, very turbid and unable to see, and has problems in terms of blue-green algae. That's water quality. You also have rooted plants. They're not exactly the same thing. Aeration does little, if anything, for aeration for rooted plants. The major thing is that you're dealing also with a very shallow lake. I mean, you can't get around the fact that you got an average of about 5 or 6 feet. So in terms of that. And then just lastly, we've had these comments before and such, and with the permission of the chair, this is among the various things you can get from the University of Florida and other college things that goes through, talks about herbicide labels. And everyone talks about the approval of the EPA as if this is something that is, I don't know, back rooms with cigar smoke and all that sort of stuff. Just, this refers to the pesticide label. I've mentioned before in terms of the reasons people keep the label is it's well established. And I can either read this in or I can just put it in, but it's a brief paragraph. The pesticide label is a very expensive document. The information, the pesticide label represents the research, development, and registration procedures that a pesticide must undergo before reaching the consumer at the market, frequently at the cost of millions of dollars to the manufacturer. The US EPA requires a manufacturer submit data from nearly 150 tests prior to that product's approval for use, including toxicity, environmental persistence, and many other factors that affect how the pesticide will be safely and effectively used. The pesticide use information obtained in this process is referred to the label or labeling, two similar words but with different meanings. The label is the information printed and attached in the pesticide container, and again, that gives the product's clearance to sell to applicators of pesticides. And again, in many cases, reusing or using the pesticide in a way that is not consistent with the label is unlawful. It's unlawful to destroy the label or use a pesticide in a manner inconsistent with or not specified in the label. Misuse of a herbicide is a violation of federal and state law, and people have been imprisoned for pesticide misuse. So EPA approval is not necessarily an easy thing, nor is it lightly given. I guess that's the point I want to make. Are there things, I suppose, in terms of the FDA or something that are similar, you know, in terms of the use? And there's things, products have been pulled off the market, there's no denying, but it's not, it's a meaningful label. It's a meaningful database of information.
Through the chair,
Is that, I couldn't find that in the other one. Is that a-
I can,
Thank you.
so through the chair, Mr. Mitchell, you were saying pesticides and herbicides interchangeably, but
herbicides are, everything is a pesticide, herbicides are the plant destroying type of pesticide. Pesticide is just the general term.
got it.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Rodenticides are pesticides, pardon.
Through the chair.
Excuse me.
David, you mentioned that other conservation commissions have permitted the use of herbicides and that they could be a resource for us. I just was wondering if at some point you could provide us with some suggestions.
Okay. Again, they're not necessarily ones that I work with
Right,
and
I
stuff,
understand.
but I could easily get probably 5 and probably try to get ones that are more extensive in their conservation in terms of their order of this. Again, this is dependent upon the DPW's agreement to me to do that research.
Absolutely.
Well, just
If you
more
forward the
basic, I
info-
can't
if you would
promise lots of things.
If you would forward the information to me and to Don.
That would be
Please.
fine.
Thank
That
you
would be
very
fine.
much.
On that note, just touching on the comment in regard to algae versus rooted
Aquatic
issues,
plants, yes.
aquatic
Yeah,
plants
yeah.
issues. Another thing that I just saw in some of the case studies were that when you knock down the rooted plants and use herbicides for them, then sometimes it can result in increased algae in the lake because they compete for light and whatnot. So you have one problem kind of replacing another,
Right.
and you can find yourself then having to treat the algae, you know,
Well-
with an herbicide. Like, I guess, has there been?
Well, through the chair, the integrated, I mean, there's two things that we talked about, I think, before. The short term that they need to be careful about looking at, they don't get a dissolved oxygen. I mean, it depends on the percentage of the lake you look. You don't want to have too much organic material being decomposing and leading to dissolved oxygen. That's why you often treat only a small portion of the lake to begin with. The second thing is also keeping probably a combination of open water and rooted habitat. I've seen extremes of both cases. I've worked on lakes where there was a secchi disc of 6 inches below a sewage treatment plant. There were no macrophytes. There was no light. So, I mean, I've seen the other thing where it's completely carpeted. The water is crystal clear, but it's nothing but macrophytes. So there is a dynamic between those two. Open water and nutrients, you can lead to high fly rates. Lots of light and shallow, which sediments lead to macrophytes. So it's the balance that's trying to do that. And one of the things I think that you see in this particular thing is that when you're looking at the shallow areas in the north, that's where the plants are the predominant issue. If you got situations where you And I should say that, more to your direct comment, I don't think reduction in the amount of biomass we're talking about would tip the lake into a poor water quality lake. But there,
Okay.
sorry, that's a long answer.
All right. In the back there, I think your hand's been up for a while.
Christine Connell, formerly of 16 Downey Street, but we still have grandparents on the lake. We've been on the lake for 5 generations, so I have a lot of concern for Lake Maspinock. And first I just want to say I sincerely appreciate all the hard work and effort that's gone in on the part of everyone. It's been such a long time since the town meeting, and considerable amount of work has gone in, and I acknowledge all of that. But I still remain concerned about the use of chemicals in the lake, as some others have already brought up. This is by no means I'm not a biologist, I'm not a scientist, so I don't mean to try to cast doubt on anyone's expertise, but I do feel like I need to raise my own concerns in terms of the safety of the chemical dicot. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is just the approval process for the EPA versus, let's say, the European Union. With the EPA, to my understanding, if it hasn't been proven harmful to humans, then it can go through the process of approval, versus in the European Union, they take a different approach, and approval is, it has to be proven that it is not harmful to humans in order to be approved. So it's just a different approach and I tend to, I know we live in the United States, but I tend to err on the side of caution, and there's far more countries in the European Union than the US, so there's a lot more expertise that goes into it from many perspectives, in my opinion. So I just wanted to raise this, because I know that someone is on my phone researching off the internet, but this is a legitimate article. This is the substance info card for dicot dibromide from the EHCA, which is the European Chemicals Agency, which is an agency of the European Union. And their info card has a hazard classification and labeling info that states, so the label that has to be on it in the EU is danger. According to the harmonized classification and labeling approved by the European Union, this substance is fatal if inhaled, causes damage to organs through prolonged or repeated exposure, is very toxic to aquatic life, with long-lasting effects, is harmful if swallowed, causes serious eye irritation, causes skin irritation, may cause an allergic skin reaction, and may cause respiratory irritation. And if you're questioning how that came about, the hazard classification, and I'm not going to keep going on reading, this is just one short thing, but the hazard classification and labeling information is based on a standardized system of statements and pictograms established under the classification and labeling and packaging regulation, making sure that the hazards presented by chemicals are clearly communicated to workers and consumers in the European Union. The CLP regulation uses the UN, United Nations, Global Harmonized System, and European Union specific hazard statements. So this isn't some crackpot website. I mean, this is for real, and I just feel increasingly uncomfortable the more research I do about this chemical, that we are going to introduce it into the lake, number one, and two, as you mentioned on the board, that we don't have a plan for other things to do after this. Everything seems to be either too expensive or not appropriate, except for the drawdown. So I still stand here as a citizen of the town asking for more heavy-handedness in terms of dealing with the one property on the lake that is preventing us from doing this. I just plead that we go back and reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Again, I'll just, simply the fact that there is a label that says toxic, that is irritants and all that, most labels will do it. The point is not whether to debate European Union versus EPA. It's about what dose they're talking about. At what dose do you get irritation? At what dose is it toxic? I mean, the whole thing is exposure tear is a combination of the exposure time, the concentration, and the means of application, whether it's dermal, all those kinds of things. So most of the things that we ingest for multivitamins are toxic at high doses. In fact, most of our food items have problems at very high doses. So again, I think it's very careful that it's not, it seems alarming to see these kinds of terms, but in many cases, they would be true for if you looked at rubbing alcohol, if you looked at, other kinds of things that were common, or household cleaners, in the sense that the concentrations is a key there. And so just simply them saying,
I think
it's
the
not a
board-
damning fault that they're toxic, because that's,
Right, I think the board, understands and has heard the concerns on dicot. And I appreciate that from the audience and the thoughts, from the applicant. So I think we can research that on our own as well. We are at 10 o'clock. I know there's more hands up in the audience, there's more voices that want to be heard. I think there's a little bit of homework on the applicant, a couple things that you were going to look into for us. One other thing I have on my list that we touched on in the last meeting, but we talked about the notification, and it came through as a comment from DEP to the other towns' conservation commissions, and we have in the record what was sent, abutters were notified. I was wondering if we could get just to kind of close that loop in the record, a letter from the Upton and the Milford Conservation Commissions acknowledging that they are deferring to the Hopkinton Conservation Commission. I know you said you had a conversation with them, or
I had a
you
conversation
had
with
a phone
a
conversation.
representative, yes.
I think that would just close that issue in the file if they could issue a letter
I think
acknowledging that they,
Through the chair, I would ask John as the official applicant,
Correct.
when to request that.
Yep, I think that would help
Happy to do
dot
that.
the i's and cross the t's.
May I ask, Madam Chair, I know that some people have been very patient, they've come out for 1 and 2 meetings.
Yep.
Would it be appropriate if they have comments, can they send those via email through Dawn and myself?
Yes,
In the
yes,
event that
and
this meeting goes to another night?
correct. Anyone is very welcome to send emails or letters to Don.
Yes.
And he will distribute them to all the board members. Since the last meeting, we did receive, 4 or 5 letters in that regard, and we all read them, and they will be submitted into the file and go on the record. With that,
May I ask a timeline question?
yes,
I think you've done a nice job, and we're not gonna have 17 meetings, even though
Yeah.
they probably could have 17 meetings worth of comments. At what point, if it's decided to use the herbicide, at what point do you need to know to put it in? Like, if we wait till July, that's too late, obviously. If you got a green light, when were you hoping to put it in the lake?
Oh, in terms of the procedure, there's 2 things. The procedure is getting the person in place that could do that.
Right.
We were looking to do it probably late May, early June.
Okay.
Dependent on the outcome of a survey of the lake and what the weed conditions are.
Right.
Okay. All right. It helps me a
So I
little,
think we-
thinking about how much time we have to think.
right.
Oh. Do you want to speak about what your timeline is in terms of getting some?
Through the chair, we are developing a bid package to be sent out. We have to procure this through the public procurement process, and we'll be putting that out hopefully sometime end of March to be able to have someone on board, should we be green lighted, that we can have them go out and apply the herbicides if necessary.
But you're not waiting for the green light to start that discussion, that bidding process.
Through the chair, it depends on how long that green light takes.
Through the chair, does that also need to get approval from town council before?
I believe Mr. Westling is going to reach out to town council between now and the
Correct.
next time we meet to get clarification from town council on the interpretation of the town meeting vote and what needs to happen in that regard.
Through the chair, that email will go out tomorrow to town council. It's just a matter of town council weighing in and emailing back.
Okay.
There will be no public hearing about that.
Through the chair, I don't know that the town council holds public hearings to weigh in on the legal aspects of town meeting vote. I'm not trying to be flip
Yeah.
about it, but the town council will weigh in without the need for a public hearing and input from residents on the interpretation of the vote.
Right, correct. I think him weighing in on the interpretation will be part of our public hearing.
Yes.
Through
Absolutely.
his correspondence.
The results will be shared.
Okay.
Wasn't there another public meeting of this board?
I think it makes sense to continue at this point, because we need more information for the board to feel comfortable with making a decision. If
The next meeting's booked to 9:45. Just wanna try and meet earlier and spread out. We have plenty of time on, April 7th.
It's like a month away. Not that I wanna stay here forever, but can't we get the buildings to stay open till, 10:15?
No, but I'm saying you can start earlier, you can start at 7, that would spread things out. But no, we have to be out of here at 10,
Is everyone all right with starting at?
we're wearing out our welcome right now as we speak.
Yeah, I know, we're getting eyeballs.
It's our building.
I'm okay with coming early at 7.
Yeah, I can do 7.
There are rules, and they close the building at 10.
Yeah. All right, and can I get a motion to continue this to the next meeting at 7?
So moved. Beat you.
Second.
The 24th?
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll start at 7 that night?
I won't be at that
I'm not
meeting.
gonna move it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Need you to sign that.
24?
And I forwarded you those.
Awesome, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
John, this thing that somebody handed out, that was the appropriations. There was once an actual article that said, weed control at Lake. But I can't find that article.
Yes, 24.
This was just, this was the appropriations where somebody was, Whittemore, whatever it was amending the line item to 60,000 or whatever else.